Chapter 361. Susanoo shattered again. Crack! Just as King C was suspended in the air, admiring his masterpiece, a sound came from the frozen Susanoo in the center of the ice and snow world. A dazzling blue light burst out from it, instantly cutting the ice sculpture that froze Susanoo from the top. The next second, a tall blue giant wearing samurai armor and in the form of a high-nosed Tengu appeared in front of King C, holding a sword. It is Uchiha Madara's complete form of Susanoo. Immediately afterwards, black fairy patterns quickly appeared on the complete form of Susanoo. It was Uchiha Madara who attached the fairy chakra to the body of Susanoo. Ching Si, floating in the air, looked indifferently at the tall blue and black giant in front of him, and commented lightly, "What a great idea." He actually thought of using fairy arts on Susanoo, thus greatly increasing the strength of Susanoo. Then, Ching Si's tone suddenly changed, showing a bit of disdain, "But this is far from enough. And it seems that I still didn't make you remember it last time. So." The blue-green chakra aura instantly rose up, and King C had already entered the Samsara I chakra mode. The strength of the complete form of Susanoo is worthy of King C using some of his strength. This is his respect for Uchiha Madara. Senjutsu Fire-style Dragon Flame Song Technique. Uchiha Madara formed seals with his hands at the crystal on the forehead of Susanoo, and then several thick fire dragons roared and attacked King C from several different directions. The blazing hot flames seemed to be gushing out from the abyss of hell, carrying endless violent aura, and attacked King C at a high speed from several different directions. With the blessing of Fairy Chakra, the originally ordinary red flame began to gradually turn into gold. Every flame in the dragon-shaped flame seemed to be given life. It jumped and twisted its body happily, intertwined and merged with each other, forming a dazzling golden sea of fire. Feeling the sudden heat under the low temperature of the ice and snow world, King C couldn't help but nod slightly to express his approval. As expected of Uchiha Madara, the Shura of the ninja world, his fire style was indeed superb. However, the gap between the Six Paths level and the level below the Six Paths level is like a bottomless, insurmountable chasm. How can it be filled so easily? King C flew towards Uchiha Madara at a very fast speed, while concentrating his pupil power in his left eye, and activated Xiaoming Biguna, shrinking the two fire dragons attacking from the front to almost invisible levels, and then he accelerated in an instant and came to the upper side of the complete form of Susanoo. Then, King C smiled at Uchiha Madara's crystal on the forehead of the complete form of Susanoo, and immediately assumed a kicking posture in the air. Seeing the smile on King C's face and King C's somewhat familiar starting action, Uchiha Madara suddenly felt alarmed. After all, those who smile at you may not necessarily be friendly to you, they may also want you to die. Moreover, in the blink of an eye, those painful experiences that Uchiha Madara did not want to recall also came back in waves of madness. Uchiha Madara will never forget that his complete form of Susanoo was shattered by Kiyoshi's kick the last time he fought Kiyoshi. Although he had used Senjutsu Chakra to greatly enhance the strength of Susanoo this time, he still didn't dare to bet whether it could block King C's kick. You know, even though his Susanoo didn't have the blessing of Senjutsu Chakra last time, Kiyoshi also didn't master Senjutsu. But this time, both sides mastered Senjutsu, which is equivalent to the Senjutsu cancelling each other out. When his complete Susanoo faced Kiyoshi, it seemed that there was no difference from last time. Therefore, the moment Uchiha Madara saw Kiyoshi's actions, he began to frantically continue to output eye power and fairy chakra to his complete form of Susanoo, in order to soothe the slight fear that he had not noticed deep in his heart. Immortal Magic Instantaneous Burial. King C gathered the Senjutsu Chakra in his right leg, got into position, and kicked Uchiha Madara directly at the crystal on the forehead of the complete form of Susanoo. A white light flashed across the sky like lightning, and with a crisp crack sound, the complete form of Susanoo, which Uchiha Madara had high hopes for, collapsed at the touch of King C's blow, and was once again shattered by King C's kick. The seemingly indestructible defense of Susanoo was shattered and collapsed under King C's powerful blow. Suddenly, countless blue-black chakra fragments drew beautiful arcs in the sky like fireworks, scattered, and flew in all directions at an astonishing speed, and finally fell and hit the ice and snow world below, making a series of shaking sounds again, triggering bursts of roars and explosions. However, Uchiha Madara's efforts were not ineffective. At least, the complete form of Susanoo bought him about half a second before it was completely shattered. Therefore, before Kiyoshi attacked him, Uchiha Madara was able to escape from his Susanoo in time, avoiding the fate of being directly killed by Kiyoshi's kick. Chapter 362. On the other side, at the same time that Seiji was fighting Uchiha Madara, Otsutsuki Tenshin and his group also entered the ambush site prepared by Shimura Danzo. Due to Kyoji's departure, after discussion, the people of Kirigakure no longer wanted to continue to travel slowly in the land of fire and enjoy the scenery along the way. Instead, they quickened their pace and wanted to return to the village as quickly as possible. After all, they had been away from the village for a long time. In a valley about 100 kilometers away from Konoha village, Danzo Shimura, with all his root assets, is ready for battle, ready to go. This is the most convenient route from Konoha village to the eastern coast of the Land of Fire. It is also the only way for the people of the Hidden Mist village to return to the port from which they came. After all, they entered the Land of Fire through formal official channels, and the ship they took when they came here is still at the port. Therefore, they will of course choose to return by the same route. Not to mention, neither King C nor the others had ever thought that someone would attack them in the Land of Fire at this time. But the brain circuit of Danzo Shimura is different from that of ordinary ninjas. Therefore, Danzo Shimura, who had always wanted to replace Sarutobi Hiruzen as the Hokage and then lead Konoha village to unify the ninja world, out of his desire and covetousness for the power of the Rinnegan and the ability to kill 3 birds with 1 stone by retrieving the Byakugan and the Uzumaki clan at the same time, finally decided that this place would be the location for his planned siege of the people from the Hidden Mist village. He, the assistant of the Hokage, the leader of the root, the first generation Nabekage Shimura Danzo, known as the Darkness of Ninja, for the sake of Konoha and the peace of the ninja world, will wipe out the Byakugan, the Uzumaki clan, and the most important Samsara Eye in one fell swoop. Because they never thought that someone would attack them at this time and place, the people from Kirigakure did not deliberately extend their perception too far as they moved along, so they did not discover in advance that Danzo Shimura and his root subordinates had been lying in ambush in front of them for a long time. However, in front of the valley, Otsutsuki Tenshin, Uzumaki Kana and Nagato all slowed down their pace at the same time. They all felt an extremely strong sense of disharmony at this moment. Everything around them was too quiet, even to the point of being completely unreasonable. As ninjas with powerful perception abilities, the 3 were very sensitive to this. Moreover, they also clearly remembered that when Minato Namikaze led them through here to Konoha village, the valley was very lively. And now, the valley ahead is completely silent, as if shrouded by an invisible layer of tranquility. There is no rustling of wind through leaves, and no clear and melodious singing of birds. All there is the depressing deathly silence. So, Otsutsuki Tenshin made a gesture signal to stop moving forward, veins quietly emerged beside his eye sockets, and he opened his Byakugan. At the same time, Nagato on the side spread his perception to the sides and depths of the valley, while Uzumaki Kana closed her eyes and opened her Kagura Heart's Eye. However, just as Otsutsuki Tenshin, Uzumaki Kana and Nagato suddenly changed their expressions and were about to open their mouths to warn, a cold and gloomy shout came from the side of the valley, "Do it!" Knowing that the other party had noticed something was wrong, Shimura Danzo decisively gave the order to take action. So, all of a sudden, a large number of root ninjas emerged from both sides and the depths of the valley. All of a sudden, countless kunao, shurikens and all kinds of strange ninja tools were shot towards the Kirigakure people, and mixed in with them were a large number of detonating tags. The first wave of attacks from Shimura Danzo and his roots is coming. The faces of the people in Kirigakure turned grim. They really didn't expect that Konoha would dare to attack them within the borders of the Land of Fire. Was the 3rd Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen crazy? However, when they saw that the leader was their old friend Danzo Shimura from the Hidden Mist village, they immediately showed a look of realization. After all, they had all carried out the missions entrusted to them by Shimura Danzo in the Hidden Mist village, so they had a relatively good understanding of who Shimura Danzo was. Therefore, it is likely that Danzo Shimura is acting in private again without the knowledge of the 3rd Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. Then, don't blame us from the Hidden Mist village for being ruthless. Thoughts raced through the minds of the Kirigakure people, and they understood everything in an instant. Then, their eyes seemed to be suddenly filled with burning rage. Their eyes that were originally calm as water suddenly became as deep and dark as the abyss. Endless murderous aura was like a surging wave, erupting towards Danzo Shimura and his root one after another. Since Danzo Shimura dares to attack them with his root, let them all die. Today, let Konoha no longer have any roots. Otsutsuki Tenshin flashed and stepped forward quickly like a ghost, with azure chakra continuously emanating from his body. At the same time, a voice full of murderous intent rang in the ears of the others, "Freedom to act. Quick victory. Gossip, back to heaven." Otsutsuki Tenshin took a deep breath, and immediately, the chakra that surged out of his body and surrounded his body began to rhythmically move like a surging tide. At the same time, his body began to spin rapidly. As Otsutsuki Tenshin's body spun rapidly, in the blink of an eye, an incomparably huge hemispherical chakra shield was formed. Countless fierce attacks poured down like a rainstorm, but when they hit the huge hemispherical chakra shield, it was like encountering an insurmountable wall of steel and were ruthlessly bounced back. For a moment, sparks flew and the roar of detonating tags was endless. However, although this first wave of attacks from the root seemed extremely powerful, in the end no attack could break through the solid defense created by Otsutsuki Tenshin. Chapter 363. At the same time, when Otsutsuki Tenshin finished speaking, the rest of the people scattered, then each found their own direction and rushed towards the root ninja. Mei Terumi directly entered the half-tailed beast state, and with a flash she appeared in the middle of a group of root ninjas. She used a boiling escape technique, and then followed it with a dissolving escape technique, melting them instantly. Yahiko and Kisame, the two masters of water jutsu, cooperated with each other. They started with Kisame's water explosion wave to create a favorable combat environment. Then the two used wave riding strike and water instant body respectively to quickly walk on the water and launched a coordinated water jutsu attack on the root ninjas. Konan was responsible for supporting several people in the air. She used the Shikigami dance to soar above the sky, and from time to time she used detonating tags generated by paper escape to attack the root ninjas scattered in various positions below. Uzumaki Kana stayed behind, using the Avatra blockade to protect herself while continuing to maintain the Kagura Heart's Eye to perceive the movements of the root ninjas, providing her teammates with their specific locations at any time to avoid being attacked by surprise when the opponent has too many people. At the same time, she always pays attention to the movements of the root ninjas, so as to achieve success in one battle, and here everyone's strength is combined to eliminate the root from the ninja world. Finally, Nagato, with the cooperation of Otsutsuki Tenshin, quickly broke through the entanglement of the root ninjas. Then, when Otsutsuki Tenshin and the elite root ninjas guarding Danzo confronted each other and he stopped them by himself and left them no time to attack Nagato, he quickly approached Shimura Danzo from the air alone. Today, all the new and old grudges will be settled here. You little brat from the Uzumaki clan. You are too arrogant. Danzo Shimura sneered and mocked Nagato. This time, he had a total of 7 3 Megatama Sharingan on him, and he had a total of 7 opportunities to use Izanagi. At this time, Danzo had completely forgotten the fact that he was beaten by Nagato last time and fled away and almost lost his life. He became extremely confident and arrogant. After all, that's 7 times of Izanagi, which means 8 lives. And, more importantly, Danzo also carried a secret weapon this time, which was his right arm. Tenzo, the only experimental subject who survived Orochimaru's wood-release experiment, was also the wood-release ninja Yamato. According to the official information disclosed in the Book of Formations, he was 27 years old when he appeared in Shippuden. In other words, the time when Orochimaru conducted the wood-release experiment on the baby was roughly around the 36th year of Kirigakure in this book. Therefore, in the 44th year of Kirigakure, Orochimaru and Shimura Danzo had mastered some of the relevant techniques of wood release, but they were not particularly mature. Therefore, in the original work, Danzo finally obtained the wood release arm embedded with the Sharingan a few years later. Danzo Shimura's original right arm had been melted off by Nagato's laser cannon in the last battle. However, in order to complete the siege of the people in the Hidden Mist village without any mistakes, Danzo, who originally did not want to install a new arm so early, forcibly installed an arm injected with some of Hashirama's cells. Although the wood release technique is not mature now, and Danzo cannot suppress the erosion and backlash of Hashirama's cells on the body for a long time, there is no big problem in unlocking the seal for a short period of time and using it in battle. After all, Danzo has many 3 Megatama Sharingan on his body, not to mention that he also has the Izanagi that can save his life. At worst, after taking away Nagato's Rinnegan, I can just remove this arm in time. Therefore, Danzo finally equipped himself with this wood release arm. However, this secret weapon, the wood release arm, was actually originally prepared to deal with Seiji, who was the Mizukage. But to his surprise and great joy, Seiji was not in the team. Even though Danzo had some slight doubts and uneasiness about Seiji's whereabouts, out of greed for the power of the Rinnegan and the confidence given to him by hundreds of root elites, Danzo suppressed other thoughts and prepared to get the Rinnegan from Nagato first. However, Danzo ultimately underestimated the Rinnegan and Nagato. When Nagato removed the repulsive force, he seemed to have lost his support and fell rapidly from mid-air at an astonishing speed. Boom! With a loud bang, Nagato fell heavily on the ground. Suddenly, the ground shook under the impact of Nagato's chakra. At the same time, a strong airflow suddenly burst out, rolling up the surrounding dust and gravel, forming a cloud of smoke that covered the sky. Then, in the next second, Nagato's figure rushed out from the smoke and dust, and instantly appeared in front of Denzo, whose body was slightly shaking due to the sudden shaking of the earth, and then he threw a heavy punch with the ability of Shuridu. Just when Nagato's fist was about to hit Denzo's face, a smile of success flashed across Denzo's lips. He did not dodge, but in a moment extended his pale right arm, which had been unsealed long ago, directly towards Nagato's abdomen. Wood release, cutting technique. In an instant, the extremely sharp wooden thorn directly pierced through Nagato's body, and then suddenly exploded inside Nagato's body, continuously branching and growing. When Denzo saw that his attack was easily effective, a look of satisfaction appeared on his face, and the curve of his mouth became bigger and bigger. The Rinnegan was just so powerful, and he could easily deal with it with one move of wood release. So, Denzo immediately stretched out his hand directly to Nagato's eyes, ready to reap the fruits of victory. However, the complacent Denzo ignored Nagato's expression. Nagato, whose body was pierced by the wood release, did not show any sign of pain at this moment. Instead, he showed a smile just like Denzo. The next moment, Nagato's body turned into several streaks of lightning and dissipated in front of Shimura Denzo. At the same time, the sudden lightning scattered on Shimura Denzo's body, causing him to fall into a short state of paralysis. It is lightning release, shadow clone. At this moment, out of the smoke and dust raised by Nagato's landing, another Nagato rushed out and fired a fire escape at Shimura Denzo, who was paralyzed on the spot. Chapter 364. Fire Style, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Nagato compressed a large amount of chakra together, spewed out a dazzling torrent of flames from his mouth, and then transformed into a scorching fire dragon that was big enough to ignite the air. With the power to destroy the world, he rushed straight towards Denzo Shimura with his fangs and claws. Wherever the fire dragon passed, the scorching heat burned the ground black, smoke and dust billowed up, and even the space seemed to be slightly distorted by this terrifying energy. Since you want to be Hokage so much, then bury yourself in this sea of fire. Nagato thought. Before the flame dragon arrived, Denzo Shimura had already felt the extreme heat. Drops of sweat dripped down his cheeks, and his face became uglier and uglier. However, he had no choice but to watch the flame dragon getting closer and closer to him. Before the flame dragon was about to hit his body, Denzo finally managed to get out of the paralysis state, endured the discomfort of his body, formed the three seals of Mao Highway, and at the last moment, activated Izanagi. Before Denzo Shimura could make any other moves, he was completely engulfed by the scorching flames. The terrifyingly high temperature instantly ignited his clothes and hair, making a crackling sound. Fire escape. Burning people to death. Denzo Shimura's first life. Game over. A moment later, on the side of the battlefield, the figure of Denzo Shimura emerged from the void. Denzo, who was just defeated instantly by Nagato, now had a solemn expression on his face. It seems that the road to obtaining the Rinnegan will not be so smooth. However, it is not a big problem after all. I still have many opportunities to Izanagi, which is more than enough. Although he has put away his arrogant heart, Shimura Denzo is still full of confidence and still believes that he will win in the end. However, how could Nagato give Denzo Shimura a chance to struggle? This is not the Death Forest, and Sarutobi Hiruzen will not come to rescue or disrupt the situation. Therefore, Nagato was using all his strength at this time, and he used all his abilities to attack Denzo crazily. The moment he sensed the appearance of Denzo Shimura, Nagato directly locked onto Denzo Shimura's position, raised his hand and used 10,000 Things Sky Attraction, pulling the just resurrected Denzo directly to his position. Then, two arms stretched out from Nagato's shoulders, and with the sound of mechanical sounds, they transformed into two black chakra cannons that flashed with purple light. The next second, a series of missiles were launched directly, firing at Denzo Shimura, who was pulled over by gravity. Strange fire arrow. Boom. 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 The loud sound of explosions continued to echo across the battlefield, and the strong shock waves generated by the explosions spread rapidly in all directions with an overwhelming force. Suddenly, smoke and dust filled the air and flames shot up into the sky. Shimura Danzo's figure was instantly swallowed up by the endless explosion. A miniature mushroom cloud of fire rose into the sky, as if it was going to ignite the entire sky. The raging flames of the explosion burned wildly, mercilessly licking everything around it. The sounds of explosions that came one after another intertwined together to form an extremely exciting and beautiful symphony. After the missiles hit Danzo, they released terrifying energy that was enough to completely destroy his body. Danzo Shimura, who was pulled over by Nagato's full-strength 10,000 Things Sky attraction, put up no effective resistance at all and was completely enveloped by the power of the explosion. Danzo Shimura's second life. Game over. When Danzo Shimura's figure emerged from the void again, his face had become completely gloomy. If the first death could be barely attributed to his carelessness, then the second death was because he was crushed by Nagato without any resistance. Although Danzo Shimura became inflated by the wood release and multiple opportunities to become Izanagi, he was, after all, a veteran Kage who had experienced many battles. Losing 2 lives in a row was enough to make him regain his rationality that had been suppressed by his inflated mind, and change his fanatical desire for the Rinnegan. With his narrow left eye that revealed a cold look and his right eye that flashed a scarlet light, he stared at Nagato not far away. Danzo Shimura was rapidly formulating his battle plan in his mind. However, Nagato didn't care what Danzo Shimura thought. He once again locked onto the location of Danzo Shimura, who was resurrected through Izanagi, and then rushed directly towards Danzo. This time, he wanted to make Danzo die in a different way. Seeing Nagato's actions, Danzo's eyes turned cold. He quickly took out a kunao, attached wind chakra to it, forming a sharp wind sword, and then with the blessing of wind chakra, he rushed towards Nagato violently. Chapter 365. In the blink of an eye, the two collided with each other. Chiang! Danzo's vacuum blade struck the yin-yang release black rod that Nagato condensed as he rushed over, making a dull sound. Immediately afterwards, after the collision, the two people pulled back at the same time, quickly separated, and then pushed hard against the ground at the same time, rushing towards each other again. The 3 Megatama Sharingan in Danzo's right eye spun wildly, predicting Nagato's next move. The next second, Danzo gathered chakra at the solace of his feet, jumped high, and chopped down vertically with his vacuum blade. He wanted to split Nagato in half. Nagato's reaction was also extremely quick. After all, the insight of the Rinnegan was much better than that of the 3 Megatama Sharingan. Nagato bent his knees and squatted, shifting the center of gravity of his body to the ground. Then he tightly grasped the yin-yang black stick in his hand, slid forward on his knees, and rushed directly towards Shimura Danzo's attack. This is a battle of conversation with eyes. And the result, of course, is that the Rinnegan wins. The yin-yang black rod in Nagato's hand was like a black lightning. It instantly penetrated Danzo's abdomen with the force of thunder, and directly tore a shocking hole in his abdomen. One could even clearly see the squirming internal organs inside. Blood spurted out instantly, accompanied by a scream of unbearable pain and agony. After struggling for a moment, Shimura Danzo died again. Shimura Danzo's third life. Game over. Not long. Danzo Shimura was resurrected again through Izanagi. In just a short period of time fighting with Nagato, Shimura Danzo had already lost 3 lives. However, most of this already short time was spent on Danzo's resurrection, and the time when Danzo and Nagato actually fought was only those 3 fleeting rounds. Shimura Danzo, who had just resurrected, no longer had the confidence he had just felt. The 3 different ways of dying simply made him feel depressed. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. How could the Rinnegan be so powerful? Could it be that last time in the Forest of Death, this little Uzumaki brat was playing me? All kinds of questions were swirling in Danzo's mind. He couldn't believe it at all. He had already installed the wood release arm and possessed the wood release power of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. Compared with the last time, it could be said that he had received an epic enhancement. However, he was still easily beaten by this evil Uzumaki brat. This was a little hard for Danzo to accept. So, Danzo Shimura became more and more angry the more he thought about it, and he just exploded. Wind release vacuum jade. His hands flew up and down as he quickly formed seals. Danzo took a deep breath, puffed up his chest, aimed at Nagato's position, and spit out a high-pressure wind ball that was compressed to the extreme. Like a rocket launched from a barrel, it rushed towards Nagato with astonishing power and a piercing whistle. For a moment, the wind was raging, sand and rocks were flying, and even a deep gully was scraped out on the ground. Nagato quietly watched the whistling vacuum ball, and a trace of disdain flashed across his samsara eye. Danzo, old dog. Are you confused? The samsara eye can absorb all ninjutsu. Sealing technique, suction seal. Nagato raised his right hand slightly, and a translucent chakra protective shield appeared, directly absorbing all of Danzo's wind jutsu. However, Danzo certainly wasn't going to give up after being beaten. This wind escape technique was only to buy time for his next ninjutsu. While Nagato was absorbing Danzo's wind jutsu, the seal in Danzo's hand changed again. A large amount of chakra was extracted in one breath and then burst out. Wooden release, the birth of the tree realm. The extreme anger was like a surging volcanic magma, erupting violently deep in Danzo's heart and causing Danzo to subconsciously squeeze the life energy in his body. Danzo instantly unleashed all his potential and used this wood-release ninjutsu that he had never mastered before. In an instant, accompanied by the violent shaking of the earth, countless thick trees suddenly emerged from the ground like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, and began to grow madly at an astonishing speed. Their branches intertwined and entangled with each other, forming a dense forest in the blink of an eye. The forest continued to expand in size, rolling and surging like raging waves, sweeping towards Nagato's position at a rapid speed. Looking at the forest in front of him that could be called a sea of trees, Nagato was a little surprised. He had never expected that Danzo would be able to do this after his explosive growth. After all, his teacher Seiji had analyzed to him why the wood-release ninjutsu of the ninja god was so powerful. You know, the reason why Hashirama Senju's wood release is so powerful is because the person who performs wood release is Hashirama Senju, who possesses a sage body. Moreover, Hashirama Senju's wood release is not only a combination of earth and water chakras, but more importantly, it is the huge and extraordinary life energy of Hashirama Senju, or yang release. Therefore, even if Danzo gained the ability to perform wood release by transplanting Hashirama's cells, he was limited to conventional wood release ninjutsu as he did not have a sage body. Danzo was simply incapable of using those advanced wood release ninjutsu. Therefore, Danzo's explosion made Nagato feel a little surprised. After all, he really didn't expect that with Danzo's extremely selfish personality, he would be willing to spend his own life energy to supply and support such a large-scale wood-release ninjutsu. However, Danzo's birth in the world of trees only made Nagato take it slightly seriously. After all, he was just Danzo, not Hashirama Senju or Madara Uchiha. With a few effortless moves, Nagato easily avoided the attack from the tree world and manipulated the repulsive force to float in the air. Then, Nagato put his hands together, and his chakra and eye power gathered madly. Earth Explosion Star. Nagato gently opened his clasped hands and sent a highly concentrated black chakra ball that suddenly appeared between them high into the sky. The next moment, a chakra ball as dark and deep as a black hole burst out with extraordinary gravitational force in the sky, sucking in everything where Nagato and Danzo were fighting. Whether it was the broken rocks, the flying dust, or even the surrounding air, they all seemed to be pulled by some invisible force and flew towards the black chakra sphere. Danzo and his tree world were certainly not immune to this terrifying gravity. The sturdy trees that were originally rooted deep in the earth were actually uprooted from the ground by gravity. Accompanied by dull loud noises, one tree after another broke away from the constraints of the land, carrying with them flying dust and dead branches and leaves, and rushed towards the black chakra sphere hanging high in the air like a group of panicked beasts. Soon, a huge rock sphere appeared in the sky, and Danzo and his tree world were sealed inside it. At the same time as the Chibaku Tensei was formed, Nagato used the power of Shuridu on his shoulders to summon two mechanical arms and transform them into chakra cannons. Then, the fully charged chakra cannon was aimed at the huge rock sphere in the sky and fired directly. Ashura's Attack. Chapter 366. Two extremely dazzling and thick deep purple lasers pierced through the huge rock sphere in the air one after another at an astonishing speed in an instant, and accurately penetrated Danzo Shimura who was sealed inside. In an instant, a violent explosion was heard, and Danzo Shimura, who was sealed in the Chibaku Tensei, was melted directly by the laser. As the giant rock sphere disintegrates, Shimura Danzo's fourth life ends. Game over. While Nagato was beating up Danzo Shimura, other people in the Hidden Mist village were also carrying out a horrific massacre against those people that Danzo brought, who he considered to be the elite of the root. Mei Terumi, who had entered the half-tailed beast state, rushed into the formation of the root ninjas like a wolf into a flock of sheep and started killing them indiscriminately. Her dark red chakra tail was flying wantonly, and with the power-enhancing effect of boiling release, no root ninja could be her match. The same goes for Otsutsuki Tenshin. For a cage-level physical ninja, these elite roots could not stop him at all. It was a complete game of bullying. He started with avian intimidation to control the opponent, then he closed the distance and attacked closely, using Bagua Palm to knock down the root ninjas one by one, as if he was in an empty space. The efficiency of Kisame, Yahiko, and Konan is slightly slower than the above two, but since the battle began, the three of them have still killed no less than 20 root ninjas in total. After all, their attack power is not enough to kill the root ninjas instantly like Mei Terumi and Tenshin Otsutsuki. However, despite this, the three of them can still suppress the root ninjas in output, especially Kisame, who has a water-based turret with an extremely large amount of chakra. After the battle began, he performed ninjutsu one after another without stopping. As for Uzumaki Kana, who was staying in the rear to perceive the situation, there were of course some root ninjas who were looking for death and tried to launch a sneak attack on her during this period, but under the perception of Kagura's heart's eye, the actions of the root ninjas were clearly exposed. So, at the moment when the root ninjas were about to launch a sneak attack, the Avatra blockade controlled by Uzumaki Kana directly caught them out of their latent state and pierced their bodies with chains. In just a short moment, 4 of Shimura Danzo's 3 Megatama Sharingan had lost their light, and more than half of his so-called root elites had also been lost. Danzo, who was resurrected again, looked around at the one-sided situation on the battlefield and couldn't help but feel anxious and confused. At this moment, he no longer had the initial arrogance. He was killed instantly by Nagato 4 times in a row. He already knew that his hope of seizing the Rinnegan was extremely slim. Staring at Nagato, Shimura Danzo's eyes, besides the constantly leaping flames of anger, were also mixed with an unspeakable fear. The power burst out by the Rinnegan made him more and more jealous, but also made his heart sink. Before this fight with Nagato, if anyone had asked Danzo what fear was, they would probably have only received a cold snort and a nose turned upside down from Danzo. After all, he was a man who combined the power of the god of ninja and the Shura of the ninja world in one person. He had no idea how to write the word fear. However, today, facing Nagato's full-strength burst, Danzo once again experienced what fear is for the first time in a long time. However, he still has a chance. With the last 3 Izanagi, he still has a chance to turn defeat into victory. Danzo's eyes revealed a hint of cruelty, and then he clasped his hands together and formed a seal quickly. Wood release, Great Forest Technique. A vine as thick as a tree root suddenly emerged from Danzo's right arm and wrapped around Nagato. Nagato chuckled upon seeing this. He could see how anxious Danzo was. I know you're anxious, but don't be anxious yet. As soon as he finished speaking, Nagato stretched out his hand and used a Shinra Tensei to directly repel the attacking wood release technique away. Then, Nagato turned his body and made a javelin throwing posture. He took out a yin-yang black stick about half a meter long and threw it back at Danzo Shimura. Call out! Accompanied by an extremely sharp and piercing whistling sound, the yin-yang black stick cut through the air at an astonishing speed. The air was instantly torn apart wherever it passed, forming a visible airflow crack. Danzo's pupils suddenly contracted. He had just felt the power of the yin-yang black rod. If he was hit by it, he would probably have to use Izanagi again. There was a surge of movement in the wood release right arm, and the next second, a giant tree emerged from the arm, driving Danzo's body to move sideways for a distance, avoiding Nagato's throwing attack. Wood release, Violent Spear Tree. Puff! The yin-yang black rod directly pierced through the thick giant tree created by Danzo. For a moment, countless tree fragments flew everywhere like flowers scattered by fairies, and smoke and dust scattered everywhere. However, neither Nagato nor Danzo cared about this because they had already launched a new round of attacks. After throwing out the yin-yang release black stick, Nagato immediately followed the black stick and rushed towards Danzo's position at a high speed. After using wood release to dodge the attack, Danzo leaned down and pressed his hands directly to the ground. Hard trees continued to grow out from the ground and surrounded and killed Nagato, who was charging. Wood style, Diamond Calling Wood. Upon seeing this, Nagato's body emitted bright blue electric light, which then transformed into flickering arcs, and their speed suddenly increased. He had already used lightning release to activate his cells to the limit of his control. In the next breath, Nagato broke through the heavy siege of wood release and appeared in front of Danzo. After dodging Danzo's kick by turning sideways, Nagato accelerated and pressed down on Danzo's forehead, then used all his strength to deliver a painful sword attack to Danzo, pressing Danzo's head directly to the ground. Boom! Danzo's head slammed hard on the ground, making a huge roar. A large cloud of dust was instantly raised, and the earth seemed to tremble under this blow. Then, Nagato tightly grasped Danzo's throat and lifted up the shocked Danzo, while his free hand pressed on Danzo's abdomen at the same time. Sealing technique, resealing the limbs. Black runes flashed across Danzo's body, and his limbs instantly became extremely heavy, so that even if he recovered his ability to move in time, he had no power to resist. Chapter 367. The Second Ninja World War. Are you the frontline commander of Konoha in the Land of Rain? And have you ever given the order to allow Konoha ninjas to attack the civilians of the Land of Rain? Nagato asked Danzo indifferently. This is his heart not. Although he learned from his teacher Seiji that the death of his parents was suspected to be caused by the secret intervention of Uchiha Madara, if it weren't for that damn Danzo who allowed the Konoha ninja to attack the civilians of the Rain country, then the Konoha ninja would not deliberately attack civilians in the war, and Uchiha Madara would not have such a great opportunity. Therefore, as the person who created opportunities for Uchiha Madara, Danzo Shimura is of course Nagato's enemy. Although he may not be aware of this, he still attacks civilians, which makes him a scum among ninjas. Of course, there is also Hanzo of the Salamander who is called the demigod. He is also one of the driving forces. If he did not start the war, the Rain country would still be peaceful, and the subsequent incident of Konoha being beaten into the territory of the Rain country would not have happened. Hearing Nagato's question, Danzo's eyes were filled with anger. He was once again subdued by the Suzumaki brat, whom he had initially ignored. So he didn't answer, but just stared at Nagato. I ask again. During the Second Ninja World War, were you the commander of the front line in Rain country and did you issue the order allowing Konoha ninjas to attack Rain country civilians? What exactly happened? Nagato's tone became even colder. At the same time, a creature that looked like the King of Hell slowly appeared behind Nagato. It was the power of Hell, spiritual communication King of Hell. Danzo Shimura had a painful expression on his face, but still shook his head with disdain. He was the assistant Hokage of Konoha village, the leader of the route known as the Darkness of Shinobi, and the man who would become the fourth Hokage in the future. How could I possibly succumb to this naturally evil Uzumaki brat, Nagato? Oh. Really? Nagato shook his head and sneered, then I will make the judgment. Danzo's behavior made him realize the result. He did not find the wrong person. Danzo was indeed one of the culprits back then. The Konoha ninja who rushed into his house and killed his parents was killed on the spot by him who had awakened the Rinnegan, and the Danzo in front of him will also die in his hands today. As for the demigod salamander Hanzo from the Rain country, let him live a little longer for now. As for the final mastermind, Uchiha Madara, let his teacher Seiji deal with him. However, what Nagato didn't know was that at the same time he was beating up Danzo, his teacher Seiji was also beating up Uchiha Madara in Lulin, and today, not only Danzo, but also Uchiha Madara would meet his end. Although Danzo refused to answer Nagato's question, under the power of Hell, his actions would also be judged as lies. Then, Danzo's mouth twisted and expanded involuntarily, and then a thick and long pink-purple tongue came out of it. At the same time, the King of Hell behind Nagato also opened his mouth wide, stretched out a hand from his mouth, and grabbed Danzo's tongue. The judgment of the King of Hell. Without any hesitation, Nagato directly activated the power of Hell, pulled out Danzo's tongue, and then had the King of Hell chew and swallow it in one bite. After Nagato let go of his hand, Danzo fell to the ground helplessly and lost any signs of life. This is the fifth way to die, and it also means that this is Danzo Shimura's fifth life. Game over. A moment later, Danzo, who was resurrected again, bravely continued to rush towards Nagato. This time, Nagato did not use any ninjutsu, but instead used physical skills to beat Danzo to pieces. That's right, it's a thumping. Literally a thumping. Shimura Danzo's sixth life. Game over. Soon, Danzo Shimura was resurrected again. When he saw that there were only a few of his root subordinates left on the battlefield, Danzo turned around and ran without hesitation. He had to run. This was his last chance to become Izanagi. He had to stay useful and continue to shine for Konoha. But how could Nagato let Danzo go? He immediately controlled the repulsive force, flew into the air, and quickly chased after the fleeing Danzo. After getting close enough to Danzo, Nagato fell back to the ground, then raised his hand and activated the Jianxiang Tianyan to suck back Danzo who was running for his life. However, what Nagato did not see was that Danzo Shimura, who was sucked back by him with his back to him, had a smile on his face, as if his plan had been successful. When Danzo was about to be controlled by Nagato again, he suddenly formed a seal with his back to Nagato. Sealing technique, seal of self-karma binding. Black sealing runes instantly covered Nagato's body, binding him in place. Danzo took this opportunity to get rid of gravity, turned in the air, and reached out to the Rinnegan in Nagato's eye sockets. Rinnegan! I'll take it right now! Danzo shouted excitedly. This is the chance to turn defeat into victory that Danzo has been waiting for. Through repeated close encounters with Nagato, he finally completed the layout of activating the seal of self-binding with only one chance left to use Izanagi. And before Nagato was controlled this time, he successfully froze Nagato in place. Chapter 368. Looking at Danzo, who had an extremely crazy and excited look on his face, and the dry hand that was getting closer and closer to his Rinnegan, there was no panic on Nagato's face, only a hint of mockery. This was Danzo's last Izanagi, and after this, his 10 minutes of invincibility of Izanagi was completely over. So, let our Mr. Shimura Danzo experience a brand new and novel way of dying again. Old dog! How dare you play sealing techniques in front of me? The mocking words came out of Nagato's mouth without any ripples, which made Shimura Danzo, who was extremely excited because he was about to get the Rinnegan, suddenly startled. Danzo suddenly realized that something was wrong, damn it. Although he always called Nagato Uzumaki brat, all his attention was attracted by Nagato's Rinnegan, and he completely subconsciously ignored Nagato's identity as a member of the Uzumaki clan. In other words, Danzo thought of Nagato's identity as a member of the Uzumaki clan, but he never thought that the young Nagato had the ability to easily break his sealing technique. So, the plan that Danzo had finally completed after going through countless hardships was aborted. His behavior of showing off the sealing technique in front of the Uzumaki clan is just like showing off the Sharingan and fire release in front of the Uchiha clan. It is simply showing off one's skills in front of an expert and making a fool of himself. But it was too late for Danzo to retreat. He was no longer able to make any other reactions or movements at this point. A strange smile flashed across Nagato's mouth, and the next moment, a terrifying pupil power burst out instantly, and the golden wheel reincarnation explosion that King C had stationed in Nagato's left eye through the transcription seal was directly activated. Afterwards, a dazzling golden light burst out from Nagato's hand, and then quickly condensed into a chakra lightsaber whose length broke through the sky. The entire lightsaber shone with brilliant golden light, like a golden sun descending to the world. The golden light shot straight into the sky, piercing and dispersing all the clouds in the sky, revealing the clear blue sky behind. Accompanied by the shining golden light, the golden wheel tensei explosion under Nagato's control directly fell down at Danzo in front of him. Time seemed to have completely stopped at this moment. The trajectory of the golden wheel reincarnation explosion was as dazzling as a meteor across the night sky. Wherever it passed, the air was instantly torn apart, making bursts of shrill whistling sounds. And at the moment when the golden wheel reincarnation explosion landed, the earth seemed to have suffered an unprecedented blow and began to shake violently. Boom! With a deafening roar, a huge, bottomless crack appeared on the ground in front of Nagato, like a hideous mouth, ruthlessly devouring everything around it. The original valley terrain ahead changed drastically in the blink of an eye. The mountains on both sides of the valley began to slide slowly, huge rocks rolled down, smoke and dust filled the air, and at this moment it had turned into a huge rift valley over 1 kilometer long and deep. It was only a golden wheel tensei explosion of super shadow level power, and Nagato consciously controlled his movements slightly at the last moment when the golden wheel tensei explosion was about to fall, preventing it from unleashing all of its power. Danzo Shimura still maintained the posture of stretching his hand towards Nagato's eyes, as if the golden wheel tensei explosion had not hit him, and in his eyes, there was only a dazzling golden light that flashed by. But the next second, just when Danzo's outstretched hand was about to touch Nagato's Rinnegan, he suddenly felt that his body had lost control. Then Danzo's entire body split in two from the middle, and relying on inertia, he continued to rush forward from both sides of CG. The Danzo who was split into two halves continued to move for about 2 meters before finally falling to the ground weakly with the sound of thump and thump. After twitching a few times, he lost his life. Maybe it was because the speed of Golden Wheel Tensei explosion was too fast. Until this moment, a large amount of thick, scarlet blood gushed out from Danzo's body that was cut in half like a flood, drawing a series of thrilling arcs in the air, and then dyed the ground on both sides of Kingji red. Blood flowers are flying all over the sky. Danzo Shimura's eyes were filled with fear, and he seemed to want to make a final cry, but because his body was separated, he could not make any sound. So I was hit. This was the last thought that came to Danzo Shimura's mind after he was split in half. As Izanagi was activated for the last time, the 3-check Sharingan in Danzo Shimura's right eye turned grey and lost its light forever. Shimura Danzo's 7th life. Game over. After a few breaths, Danzo Shimura's figure once again emerged from the void. And this is his last life. Having lost all his Sharingans, if he is killed by Nagato again, it will be true death. At this moment, Danzo no longer had the confidence and high spirits he had before. His ugly old face was extremely distorted, and panic and fear continued to appear on his face. The last chance of a comeback was easily defeated by Nagato, and Danzo, who only had 1 life left, was completely defeated by Nagato. He knew clearly that today, he was probably completely screwed. Danzo was breathing heavily, his heart was now filled with despair and unwillingness. His roots, his ambitions, everything he had, were about to disappear. Suddenly, a look of extreme pain appeared on Danzo's face, and his whole body was shaking. Chapter 369. Danzo roared in unbearable pain. Along with Danzo's sudden wailing, thick branches suddenly sprouted from his transplanted right arm, and then began to grow violently. Danzo had forced himself to install a wood release arm made with the immature wood release technique just for this operation. If he ended the battle in a short time, with the help of the 3-hook Sharingan, he could still suppress the erosion and backlash of Hashirama's cells. However, in the battle with Nagato, Danzo Shimura not only failed to achieve the quick victory he had originally expected, but because he was killed by Nagato time and time again, he kept using Izanagi. Therefore, with the total consumption of 7-3 Megatama Sharingan, Danzo Shimura no longer had any possibility to suppress the erosion and backlash of Hashirama's cells on his body. So, the current scene appeared. Nagato looked at Danzo, who was transforming into a big tree in front of him, and a hint of realization appeared in his eyes. Nagato, who had obtained information about wood release and Sharingan from his teacher Seiji, quickly figured out Danzo's situation. It seems that he doesn't need to take action for this last life. Danzo Shimura has chosen another novel way to die for himself. Therefore, Nagato just watched Shimura Danzo screaming in silence without any other unnecessary actions. At this time, the people of Kirigakure, who had already ended the battle and wiped out all the root ninjas brought by Danzo, also came to Nagato's side. Together with Nagato, they looked at this daring Hokage assistant with indifference. Hashirama's cells rampaged in Danzo's body, and in the blink of an eye, thick branches began to emerge from all parts of Danzo's body, even from his eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. It can be said that Danzo's body was almost covered by tree branches at this time. Perhaps, we can call him Tuan Dashu Zhang? The riot of Hashirama's cells completely destroyed Danzo's faith. He already knew that he could not survive. As a result, Danzo's expression suddenly became crazy, and his only remaining eye stared at the people from the mist village not far in front of him. Danzo struggled to move his left arm, which was still able to move, and tore off his tattered shirt that had been pierced by branches emerging from his body. For the ninja world. For Konoha. I will never let you live. Suddenly, a black sealing rune appeared on Danzo's chest, and then a large amount of ink-black blood gushed out from Danzo's body, and the range became larger and larger. Hiruzen. After all, I still couldn't become Hokage. I couldn't catch up with you. But at least I can take Kirigakure's sealing technique, 4-symbol seal. At the end of his life, Danzo used this powerful sealing technique to carve sealing runes on the body of the practitioner, thus killing both parties. Nagato and Uzumaki Kana's faces changed instantly when they saw the sealing rune that appeared on Danzo's chest. Having practiced the Uzumaki clan's sealing technique, how could they not recognize this inner 4-symbol seal? So, without saying a word, Nagato directly activated the eye technique Takamaji Ehara that Seiji had stored in his other Rinnegan, and Uzumaki Kana, following Nagato's eye signal, used the Vajra seal to connect the rest of the people together, and then disappeared together on the spot. When they appeared again, they were already more than 1 kilometer away from the location of Danzo's inner 4-symbol seal. And this is the maximum distance that Nagato can transfer with so many people using Takamagahara. Soon, a translucent black sphere that had expanded to the extreme spread out with Danzo as the center, sealing up everything within the range of the sphere. However, Danzo sealed away everything, and the only thing left was a hemispherical pit with an unusually smooth and neat cut and a radius of nearly 100 meters. Danzo Shimura. Die. Before his consciousness fell into complete darkness, countless thoughts surged through Danzo's mind, and those scenes of his time with the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen also flashed through his mind quickly one after another. You are the leaves that bathe in the sun, and I am the roots in the darkness, Hiruzen. The Rinnegan, the root, the Sharingan, the wood release, the annihilation of the Uchiha clan, none of them mattered in the last moments of Danzo's life, and what he was thinking about all the time was still his good friend, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, and the position of Hokage that he had failed to successfully ascend to. It can be said that Danzo Shimura's deep obsession with Sarutobi Hiruzen and the position of Hokage accompanied him throughout the rest of his life. In the late period of the First Ninja World War, Danzo followed his teacher, the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, as a bodyguard to the hidden cloud village in the Land of Lightning to attend the alliance ceremony between the two villages. During the ceremony, Kinkaku and Ginkaku suddenly launched a rebellion, severely injuring the second Raikage AI, and led the Kinkaku troops in a frantic pursuit of the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, and his guards. During the pursuit, the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, who was seriously injured in a surprise attack, discussed with everyone that they needed to let one of them act as bait to ensure that the other teammates would have time to escape successfully. At that time, although Danzo had the intention of volunteering to be the bait, he was too timid to speak out in time at the critical moment, and was instead beaten to the punch by his good friend Sarutobi Hiruzen. In the end, the second Hokage, Senju Tobirama, chose to serve as the bait himself, and then entrusted his will to his disciples as the second Hokage, and appointed Sarutobi Hiruzen to succeed the position of Hokage. So, from that time on, Danzo began to desire the position of Hokage deep in his heart. After all, in his opinion, if he had not been speechless for a moment, the position of the third Hokage would have been his, and Sarutobi Hiruzen would have had nothing to do with it at all. At the moment of Danzo's death, far away in Konoha village, in the Hokage building, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was working in the Hokage's office, was suddenly stunned and his eyes involuntarily looked towards the east. At the same time, he suddenly felt a sense of loss in his heart, as if something very important to him had left him forever. Chapter 370. After the inner four-symbol seal ritual was completed, Nagato and the others immediately turned back. When they saw the effect of Danzo's final sealing technique, they could not help but be dumbfounded and felt a surge of fear in their hearts. The range of this sealing technique is too large. If it weren't for the eye technique Takamaji Ehara that CG sealed in Nagato's eyes, Danzo might have really been able to take away those who were a little slower among them in the end. However, a large range also has its advantages. At least all the traces of their recent battle have been sealed by Danzo, and even most of the corpses of those root ninjas have been sealed by Danzo. Therefore, this greatly reduces their time and energy in cleaning the site. After all, although this place is far away from Konoha, as a large ninja village, its perception team will definitely be able to sense the chakra fluctuations erupting here, and the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen will definitely send out the Anbu to investigate. Therefore, the time left for them to clean up the battlefield and erase all traces may not be much, and they need to leave far enough away before the Konoha ninja arrives to avoid being sensed by Konoha's perception ninja. I can only say that Danzo is still a good person after all, and he can make contributions for them in the end. As expected, he is a loyal friend of the Hidden Mist village. While Nagato was beating Danzo again and again in different ways, CG was also beating Uchiha Madara inhumanely. After kicking Uchiha Madara's complete form of Senjutsu Susanoo to pieces, King C's body was as fast as lightning. He accelerated in the air and caught up with Uchiha Madara who had escaped from Susanoo in time, and appeared diagonally above Uchiha Madara. Then, King C kicked Uchiha Madara's abdomen with an extremely sharp whip kick. Uchiha Madara, who was hit hard again, fell rapidly from the air like a cannonball and hit the ground heavily. In an instant, the earth began to tremble, smoke and dust rolled up, and formed a huge dust column that rushed straight into the sky. The smoke and dust gradually dissipated, and a huge deep pit appeared where Uchiha Madara fell to the ground. King C was floating indifferently in the air, his samsara eyes flashing brightly, staring at Uchiha Madara lying there in a mess. Although it was just a relatively casual kick for Kiyoshi, it still almost made Uchiha Madara die. The difference in strength was too great. At this time, Uchiha Madara no longer thought about how to regain the face he lost last time from Kiyoshi. After experiencing another beating, he has now completely faced the reality and is ready to make a strategic retreat. However, before that, he still has to rely on Izanaga's ability to distort reality to fight with Kyoshi again, and then find an opportunity to retreat. After all, he knew clearly that Kingxi would not let him go again so easily. But how could things be as simple as Uchiha Madara thought? Now that the fight has begun, Uchiha Madara will not be able to escape from Kyoshi's grasp. What's more, Kyoshi is just warming up now, and he came here with the intention of crushing Uchiha Madara to death completely. Uchiha Madara coughed violently and struggled to get up from the ground. Kingxi's kick almost broke him apart. If he didn't have the Fei coat on him that weakened some of the attack, and if he didn't have the self-healing ability gained from transplanting Hashirama's cells, the Izanaga he had set up in advance would probably have been activated directly with this kick. The 3 Megatama Sharingan was spinning wildly, and Uchiha Madara's mind was racing. Kyoshi's calm waiting posture in the air clearly showed that he looked down on him and had enough confidence that he could crush him, which made Uchiha Madara furious. After all, no one had ever dared to humiliate him like this. Even Hashirama Senju didn't dare to be so arrogant and look down on him when he was fighting him. However, since Kingxi is so arrogant and thinks he can definitely defeat Uchiha Madara today, then this is just the right opportunity for him to escape. So, after standing up, Uchiha Madara quickly formed hand seals and launched a direct attack on CG in the air. Senjutsu Fire Style Dragon Flame Song Technique. Several fire dragons spewed out from Uchiha Madara's mouth, roaring and rushing towards Kingxi in the air. Wherever the fire dragons passed, they brought up a gust of scorching wind, and the air was distorted by the burning, making a sizzling sound. Kingxi looked at the attacking fire dragon with a smile on his face. Then, he locked onto Uchiha Madara's position, activated Takamaji Ehara, appeared next to Uchiha Madara, and then punched Uchiha Madara in the face. Uchiha Madara was shocked. He had made a mistake again. He didn't expect that Kingxi's speed of space transfer was so fast that he hadn't even finished preparing his next technique. However, Uchiha Madara was, after all, the Shura of the ninja world who had experienced many battles. He quickly adjusted his strategy, gave up the woodman technique hand seal, blocked Kingxi's fist with one arm, and puffed up his mouth at the same time. Senjutsu, Fire Style, Dust Hiding Technique. High-temperature flames burst out from Uchiha Madara's mouth, and the erupting air waves rolled up a large amount of hot dust, which quickly spread around with Uchiha Madara as the center. This is the only technique that Uchiha Madara has mastered that can provide 100% coverage, and this technique cannot be completely absorbed by the sealing technique absorption seal, nor can it be reduced using the Shonen Biguna. Moreover, because of the area it covers, CG cannot dodge by shrinking himself. Therefore, in Uchiha Madara's opinion, Kingxi's only way to dodge is to withdraw his hands and escape from the battle, flying into the air, and this is the moment he wants to buy. However, Uchiha Madara still underestimated CG. Although he had mastered yin-yang release because of the awakening of the Rinnegan, he had not yet become the 10 Tails Jinchuriki, and his strength had not yet reached the 6 Paths level. So, he made a mistake again. Chapter 371. The truth-seeking jade instantly appeared behind Kingxi, and then as Kingxi's mind moved, one of the truth-seeking jade turned into a long sword as black as ink, which was grasped by Kingxi's other free hand, and then slashed directly at Uchiha Madara's shoulder. Due to the characteristics of the truth-seeking jade, one of Uchiha Madara's arms, along with the Afei outer garment attached to the surface of his body, was directly cut off by the long sword of the truth-seeking jade, and immediately turned into ashes, dissipated, and annihilated. Afterwards, Kingxi ignored Uchiha Madara and flew up directly. At the same time, the rest of the truth-seeking balls formed a spherical protective shield in the blink of an eye, wrapping Kingxi inside it. Although one of the weaknesses of the truth-seeking jade is that it cannot dissolve fairy arts, it is enough to protect Kingxi from the attack range of Uchiha Madara's fire style. As for Uchiha Madara, he did buy time with the help of the dust hiding technique, but the price he paid was his arm. However, to be honest, this is actually not as satisfying as being killed directly by Kyoshi. After all, being killed means that Izanaga can be activated smoothly, and Uchiha Madara can take the opportunity to recover to his previous intact state, instead of facing the situation of being beaten up by Kyoshi again due to the loss of an arm. Kingxi looked at Uchiha Madara, who was covered in dust and did not move in mid-air, with a funny expression on his face. This old man is trapped in his own web and has ended up losing the rice while trying to steal the chicken. There's no doubt about that. I must beat him up first and then kill him. So, as soon as the effect of the dust hiding technique ended, Kingxi swooped down directly, and at the same time pulled out a white bone blade from his shoulder, with the blade pointing directly at Uchiha Madara. Looking at Seiji swooping down at him at high speed, Uchiha Madara couldn't help but reveal an indescribable and ugly expression on his face. At this moment, Uchiha Madara no longer had the cool and relaxed attitude he had before the battle began. The blood that continued to seep out of his body dyed his outer coat red. Kingxi fell to the ground with a bang, then stomped his right foot on the ground, and with the help of the recoil force generated by landing, he instantly appeared in front of Uchiha Madara. The Megatama was spinning wildly, and Uchiha Madara tried to discern Kyoshi's next move. However, at that moment, Uchiha Madara's body suddenly stiffened, and an indescribable feeling of emptiness that seemed to swallow everything surged over him like a tide, instantly wrapping him tightly. This feeling was like being submerged in endless darkness, and even the scene that was originally clearly visible in front of him became a little dim and lost its original color. Samsaranga pressure. Seiji's Rinnegan shone brightly, the sky blue light was extremely dazzling, and the tremendous pressure that erupted from it instantly successfully caused Uchiha Madara to become stiff and dizzy for 1/10 of a second. Although the time was short, it was enough for Kingxi, because in this fleeting moment, the bone blade in Kingxi's hand had already touched Uchiha Madara's body. The fighting instinct that Uchiha Madara had developed over the years of battles allowed him to use his only remaining arm to block in front of him at the last moment. With his arm pierced through, he successfully clamped Seiji's bone blade and avoided being pierced directly through the chest. Well! The intense pain made Uchiha Madara regain consciousness, but Kingxi's palm was already pressing on his face. Shinra Tenzen. The repulsive force that exploded in his face instantly sent Uchiha Madara flying away. Boom! Accompanied by a dull crash, Uchiha Madara's body was like being hit head-on by a speeding car. He flew out in a spin, then fell heavily to the ground, and continued to roll in circles. But, this is not the end. After Kyoshi sent Uchiha Madara flying, the chakra in his body exploded, and he took off with his feet. In a flash, he caught up with Uchiha Madara who was rolling on the ground, and then he gathered his strength and stomped down hard. Immortal technique boiling escape unparalleled supernatural power. Uchiha Madara, who had not yet recovered from the combination of punches from Kyoshi, was kicked by Kyoshi and crushed to pieces through his coat. The boiling chakra in his body gradually subsided. Kingxi looked at Uchiha Madara who had lost his life breath and nodded with satisfaction. Next, we have to wait for Uchiha Madara's Izanagi. After the battle began, Kingxi had been paying attention to Uchiha Madara's movements and found that he did not show any signs of launching Izanagi. Therefore, Kingxi concluded that Uchiha Madara must have used the transcription seal in advance before the battle began. After all, he was severely fooled by Uchiha Madara's Izanagi which was delayed by the transcription seal last time. So, Kingxi used Earth Escape to create a chair, and sat next to Uchiha Madara's broken body, closed his eyes, and waited quietly. After one day. It's close to noon. Uchiha Madara's body slowly turned into a residual image, and then completely disappeared from the spot. At the same time, Kingxi, who was resting with his eyes closed, also opened his eyes. A gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and he sensed the location where Uchiha Madara Izanagi was resurrected. Then, Kingxi's figure became blurred with the appearance of the space vortex, and the next second, he appeared near the place where Uchiha Madara was resurrected. However, what greeted him was a powerful fire jutsu from the newly resurrected Uchiha Madara. Immortal technique fire escape great fire extinguishment. Taking advantage of the perfect opportunity when Kingxi had just moved over to deal with his fire style, Uchiha Madara output a large amount of chakra from his body in one breath, and the seals in his hands changed at the same time. An extremely terrifying aura instantly burst out from his body. Senjutsu would release Woodman technique. Therefore, when Ching Si walked out of the space channel, he just put up the chakra shield of sealing technique absorption seal to absorb Uchiha Madara's fire escape, and then he was hit by the huge wooden man's hands like a mountain pressing down on his head. A shadow as thick as ink was overwhelming. Ching Si looked up and saw the huge hands of the wooden man in front of him rushing towards him with overwhelming force. Along with it, there was also a strong sense of oppression that made ordinary ninjas almost unable to breathe, as if everything was crushed into powder. Chapter 372. Kingxi watched the scene calmly and instantly understood Uchiha Madara's plan. This level of attack could not do any harm to him at all, and Uchiha Madara was obviously aware of this. So it was obvious that Uchiha Madara was planning a move that was even more powerful than the wooden man technique. But now Uchiha Madara does not have the nine tails by his side, and even the complete form of Susanoo in the fairy form was easily defeated by him, so probably, what Uchiha is going to use should be the true thousand hands that the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, used in the battle at the Valley of the End. However, White Zetsuafii had already been killed by King C's kick just now, and although Uchiha had learned the fairy technique after losing Afii's outer garment, King C had doubts whether his remaining vitality could support him to complete this move. But this is not important. King C decided to give Uchiha enough time and space to perform, giving him the opportunity to complete this move. After all, he also wanted to personally see the thousand-armed Buddha that was powerful enough to beat the power suit nine-tailed fox to tears in an instant. Then, King C's figure flashed, and he flew up like a flash of lightning, and took the initiative to meet the huge wooden hands that were falling down rapidly. Blue-green flames rose up instantly, and 3 Tao-seeking jades appeared beside King C's hands at the same time and began to spin rapidly. Silver Wheel Reincarnation explodes. A flash of silver light appeared, and a violent tornado pressure roared up into the sky, crushing the falling wooden hand into pieces. For a moment, a large amount of wood chips and debris fluttered in the air, as if they had lost the restraint of gravity and were flying wildly. After smashing both of the wooden man's palms, King C immediately rose to a higher altitude, then hung in the air and stared at Uchiha who was standing on top of the wooden man not far away. Blue chakra continued to emanate from Uchiha body, and his chakra aura was also rising rapidly at a geometric rate. Suddenly, a powerful aura came like an overwhelming tidal wave, rushing madly towards the surroundings and suddenly erupted. Senjutsu would release true thousand hands. A shadow so huge that it was beyond imagination instantly enveloped everything in front of the eyes, like a moving towering mountain connecting heaven and earth, completely covering the sky with an unstoppable force. The originally bright light was completely swallowed up, making King C's eyes dark. Immediately afterwards, countless huge wooden arms stretched out from the shadows and intertwined densely. Each arm was extremely thick and exuded endless pressure and destructive aura. However, Uchiha move has not yet completely ended. The next moment, with Uchiha unreserved and even overloaded output of his eye power, the complete form of Susanoo was used by Uchiha, and then directly put on the thousand-armed Buddha, tightly wrapping it. The wooden thousand-armed Buddha was instantly dyed with a layer of deep blue, as if it was wearing a magnificent and domineering armor robe. Susanoo no Matari Buddha. Drink. 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 Uchiha stood on top of the thousand-armed Buddha, hunched over, his chest heaving violently. Every breath seemed to have exhausted all his strength. He gasped for breath, his breathing heavy and disordered, like a wounded beast struggling to survive. Blood continuously gushed out from the corner of Uchiha mouth, forming a scarlet stream, flowing down his chin, splashing shocking blood flowers. His only remaining 3 Megatama Sharingan had also dimmed a lot, and was covered with dense bloodshot, like a red spider web covering it. Tears of blood rolled out of his eye sockets uncontrollably, one drop after another, streaking across his pale cheeks, leaving clearly visible bloody tear marks. It was a last-ditch attack that consumed almost all of his chakra and eye power. It was also an attack that surpassed the power equipment 9 tails he had used before and the true thousand hands used by Senju Hashirama. It is a combination of the power of the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan, a powerful attack that can truly be called mutually repelling forces, combined into one. Therefore, Uchiha believed that no matter how strong CG was, even if he was stronger than he was in the past or even Senju Hashirama, he would not be able to completely escape this terrifying blow that was enough to change the terrain and destroy the world. And this is the perfect opportunity for him to escape. After this attack, his body has almost reached its limit, and he must use his agate to refresh his condition. Only by injuring King C so that he can no longer fight him, can he successfully retreat from King C after his resurrection. Kiyoshi, who was in the air, looked at the thousand-armed Buddha in front of him, which was covered with Susanoo and was as big as Kagaya's complete 10 tails. A trace of solemnity appeared on his face. Moreover, King C could also feel that at this moment, his body was trembling with excitement, and every cell in his body was jumping. The desire for fighting hidden deep in his blood was awakened. The power of the Susanoo Buddha can be said to be approaching the level of the 6 paths, and this is enough to make King C completely serious. More importantly, when Uchiha was counting down to his resurrection, CG had used the Samsara Eye to carefully scan and observe Uchiha body and discovered that there was no extra 3 Megatama Sharingan implanted in his body this time. So, that is to say, Uchiha had only 2 chances to change his fate through his Izanagi. Therefore, as long as Kyoshi does not give Uchihamadara any time and opportunity to replace his eyes, then when his only remaining 3 Megatama Sharingan loses its light, it will be the time for his complete end. Then, blue-green chakra flames shot up into the sky, illuminating the surroundings shrouded in shadows. The Samsara Eye chakra mode was pushed to the extreme by Kingxi, and the truth-seeking jade appeared in front of him, spinning rapidly. Ha ha ha! Dance! Uchihamadara! Keep pleasing me! The excited Kingxi laughed out loud. Kyoshi! Uchihamadara roared, with a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. This should have been his line. Become a Buddha on top. Chapter 373. Uchihamadara did not hesitate at all, and directly controlled the 1,000-armed Buddha with Susanoo on it to launch an attack. At this moment, a large number of dark clouds in the sky suddenly gathered together, like a huge black curtain, making the originally bright sky instantly become extremely gloomy. Immediately afterwards, thousands of huge fists rushed towards the blue-green figure in the air. The air around seemed to be oppressed by an invisible force, making bursts of sharp whistling sounds, like the howling of evil spirits or the roar of wild beasts. An extremely violent friction occurred between the fist and the air, and the energy generated by the friction exploded in an instant, turning into dazzling sparks, as dazzling as fireworks blooming in a dim environment, but it contained endless danger and murderous intent. The space continued to vibrate and twist, as if it could not withstand such a horrific impact. Fine cracks appeared one after another and then spread rapidly, like a broken mirror that could completely collapse at any time. The wind arrives before the fist arrives. The overwhelming feeling of suffocation brought a hint of anticipation to Kingxi's eyes. Although he could easily dodge before the attack came, he had no intention of dodging at all, because Kingxi was enjoying the feeling of fighting on equal terms. This kind of attack is only interesting if it is a head-on collision. A flash of golden light suddenly appeared, piercing the darkness. The 9 Dao-seeking jades rotated and merged into one in front of Ching Si, forming a golden sword that exuded endless pressure. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Ching Si grasped the golden sword and slashed it horizontally in front of him. An extremely dazzling golden light flashed in the air. Facing the terrifying attack of the Susanoo Buddha, Kyoshi used all his strength to unleash the power of Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion for the first time in the ninja world. However, Kyoshi still consciously controlled the direction of the attack, otherwise, such a perfect nursery in the ninja world would probably be destroyed directly under this attack of his. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. The next second, golden light shone and burst out from the center of the fist of the 1,000-armed Buddha wearing Susanoo, illuminating the gloomy sky with incomparable brightness. Suddenly, the surrounding space seemed to be kneaded fiercely by an invisible giant hand. The space, which was already on the verge of breaking, finally suddenly collapsed under this extremely terrifying impact. As the space shattered, an extremely powerful chakra tide, centered on the impact point, squeezed wildly in all directions like a surging wave. Where the two men fought, the ground within a radius of dozens of miles instantly sank dozens of meters under the shock wave generated by the collision, and a huge desert basin took shape in the blink of an eye. Although the Buddha's head performed by Uchihamadara is already his strongest attack in his current state, due to the gap in hard power, it is still no match for the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion activated by Kingxi with all his strength. First it was the Susanoo on the outside, and then the 1,000-armed Buddha inside. After a brief stalemate, all of them were immersed in the golden light and exploded, and disappeared with a violent explosion. Uchihamadara, who was half kneeling on top of the 1,000-armed Buddha due to excessive consumption, was also not spared. Under the shining and spreading golden light, he didn't have time to make any move, and his whole body was annihilated. Uchihamadara. Total defeat. When everything fell silent, Uchihamadara appeared at the edge of a huge basin that had just been formed in the desert due to a collision. This time, Uchihamadara did not choose to delay the activation of his Nagi, because he originally planned to resurrect and run away directly after severely injuring CG with top of the Buddha. However, he really didn't expect that the true 1,000 hands that easily defeated his power suit 9-tailed fox back then, even after adding his complete form of Susanoo, still couldn't beat CG. The strength displayed by CG may only be surpassed after his plan is completed and he becomes the Jinkriki of the 10 tails. However, before that, he must survive. He has not yet found a suitable successor to take his place in the ninja world and eventually resurrect him. For the sake of his dream, he cannot die here. So, the resurrected Uchihamadara, with his two eyes turned grey and lost their light, burst out at his fastest speed and fled desperately away from the basin. At this moment, he could only pin his hopes on the fact that Kingxi had also been impacted in the previous collision and was unable to catch up in time. As long as he can create a certain distance, he will have enough time to replace his eyes, and then use sealing techniques or barriers to completely conceal his chakra aura and escape Kingxi's pursuit. However, this is ultimately just Uchiha Madara's wishful thinking. Uchiha Madara, who had just left the spot, suddenly turned as pale as death. An ominous throbbing gripped his heart like the claws of a devil. His body instinctively felt the warning scream of the fatal threat, echoing wildly in his mind. It's over. Mr. Uchiha Madara. A figure dressed in white quietly appeared in front of Uchiha Madara. It was Seiji who sensed Uchiha Madara's resurrection and directly used Takama Jiehara to transfer here. A deep despair rose up in Uchiha Madara's heart, as if a dark tide surged up from the deepest part of his soul, drowning the last glimmer of hope in his heart. Reality ruthlessly shattered his fantasy. He knew that there was no way he could survive today. However, it is impossible for him to beg for mercy from Kingxi. After all, he is the Shura of the ninja world, Uchiha Madara. Even if I have to die, I want to die on the way to charge. Chapter 374. Uchiha Madara's expression changed for a while, and finally revealed a look of relief and determination. The next second, Uchiha Madara suddenly bent his legs downward, and his whole body was like a strong bow with a fully drawn bowstring ready to be released. With a muffled bang, he stomped his foot hard on the ground, leaving a deep footprint. At the same time, his figure rushed out like an arrow from a bow, rushing straight towards Ching Si, who was not far in front of him with an extremely sharp momentum. Although his eyes had lost their sight, his perception was still there, so his movements were still extremely sharp. White smoke dissipated, and the flame fan and sickle were summoned by the spirit and instantly appeared in Uchiha Madara's hands, and then he slashed at Kingxi with force. Looking at Uchiha Madara rushing forward, a trace of respect flashed across Kingxi's eyes. Although he was an enemy, Uchiha Madara's behavior of wanting to fall on the way of charge was worthy of his title of Shura of the ninja world. Therefore, Kyoji should also give Uchiha Madara a dignified exit that suits his status. Then, let's use pure physical combat as his final dance and swan song to end his eventful life. The reincarnation eye glowed slightly, and Kingxi quickly understood Uchiha Madara's movements. He dodged his attack with a jump, and then two bone blades broke out of his body from the palms of his hands. He used his feet to gently leverage on Uchiha Madara's swept sickle and stabbed Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara suddenly stopped and turned sideways, barely avoiding Kingxi's stab. The bone blade passed by his side about 1 centimeter away, but the sharp wind caused by the stab still cut Uchiha Madara's sleeve. Although Uchiha Madara could also rely on perception to fight, he lacked the ultimate insight of the Sharingan. After all, he could not dance as smoothly as before. Although his movements were coherent, they still looked a little stiff and awkward in comparison. On the other hand, every movement of Kingxi was without any worldly air, but light, agile, smooth and natural, without any sense of stagnation, just like a dancer dancing gracefully. The various physical dance moves of the Hyuga clan were performed to the fullest by Kingxi, reaching the pinnacle. Every time he moved and changed his position, he just avoided Uchiha Madara's attack, and every time he counterattacked, he was extremely precise and hit Uchiha Madara's vital points directly. Within a few breaths, the two attacked and defended each other more than 10 times, but neither could do anything to the other. After another clash of bone blade and sickle, the two men jumped back at the same time, creating some distance between them. Although the winner was not decided, it was obvious that Uchiha Madara's robe had been torn in many places and was stained with a lot of dust and blood, while Kyoji was still wearing the snow-white Otsutsuki robe, and there was no sign that he had just experienced a fierce close combat. After taking a slight breath, Uchiha Madara rushed towards Kingxi again and swept his sickle again. However, this time, Kingxi did not dodge again, but pulled out a bone blade about the same length as Uchiha Madara's sickle from his shoulder and held it in front of him. Clang! Kingxi raised one arm and easily blocked the sickle with the bone blade, which made a crisp echo. Then, Kingxi flipped his wrist, and the bone blade pierced Uchiha Madara's heart through the gap between the sickle handle and the blade at an extremely tricky angle. Uchiha Madara sensed the danger, his face froze, and he quickly changed his tactics. He loosened the sickle in his hand, retreated quickly, and swung the flame fan in his other hand directly at Kingxi. However, the flame fan was fanned into the air, and Kingxi's attack towards his heart was a feint. King C tapped the ground with his right foot and appeared at the side of Uchihamadara in a flash. He fanned the flame fan close to his position with his arm, and pointed the sword in his hand directly at Uchihamadara's throat. Corpse vein chun dance. Uchihamadara's keen fighting instinct detected something wrong the moment the flame fan flew into the air, and a creepy aura of death instantly enveloped his heart. So he chose to trust his intuition and came up with a solution in a flash. He did a backward bridge pose with all his strength, while lowering his body as much as possible, and narrowly avoided King C's attack on his throat. But how could King C's attack be so simple? As Uchihamadara's body leaned backward, the bone blade in King C's hand also followed Uchihamadara's body and sank down, still tightly locking onto his throat. CG completely predicted Uchihamadara's prediction. However, although he failed to escape from Kyoshi's stab, Uchihamadara's backward movement bought him enough time. The chain connecting the sickle and the flame fan was pulled over by Uchihamadara in time, briefly blocking Kyoshi's bone blade for a moment. Then Uchihamadara did not dare to hesitate at all, and fell directly to the ground. After falling to the ground, he quickly rolled over and once again narrowly avoided King C's attack. After rolling several times in a row, Uchihamadara quickly adjusted his posture, supported himself on the ground with one hand, and stood up with a grim face. He was completely defeated in this round of physical combat. Except for the opening attack, he was defending miserably in every round that followed. He was completely led by Ching Si. He lost his rhythm and methods. In the end, he even had to give up his weapon. King C did not give Uchihamadara any room to breathe. He stomped his feet on the ground, and his body instantly bounced in front of Uchihamadara like a cannonball. Then, after a feint, he bypassed Uchihamadara's defensive arms and slammed into Uchihamadara from the side, pinning him down tightly. Shakebone pulse dance of Karamatsu. Countless sharp white bone spurs suddenly burst out from all the places where King C's face was in contact with Uchihamadara's body, and pierced Uchihamadara directly. From a distance, he looked like a white hedgehog. The moment King C pulled back, Uchihamadara's blood splattered all over his body, forming a shocking blood mist in the air. At the same time, Uchihamadara's chakra aura quickly weakened like a deflated ball, and became extremely weak in the blink of an eye. Ninja Shura. This is the end. Chapter 375. After the war, Kyoshi collected Uchihamadara's body, along with his weapons, the sickle and the flame fan. This time, Kyoshi could confirm that Uchihamadara was really dead, so his body would be taken back to the Hidden Mist village for research. As for his weapons, they were to be taken as trophies of King C and collected by him as a souvenir. After all, although Uchihamadara was defeated by him, he was still a powerful warrior who once stood at the top of the ninja world. After using Earth Escape to erase all traces of the battlefield, King C returned directly to the Hidden Mist village. At this time, only 2 days had passed since the end of the joint Chunin exam. However, within these 2 days, 2 people who had a great influence on the development of the ninja world died one after another. One was Uchihamadara, who was hiding in the dark and planning the infinite Tsukuyomi to bring permanent peace to the ninja world. The other was Danzo Shimura, a famous troublemaker in the ninja world, a good friend of the Hidden Mist village, the assistant to the Hokage of Konoha and the first Nabe Cage, who was known as the Darkness of Shinobi. While Uchihamadara and CG were fighting for their lives, the reactions of the ninja world were completely different from last time. Only the Sand Village, which was closest to the battlefield, sent out their enbu to investigate after the third Kazekage Tessa returned to the village and the terrifying chakra fluctuations from the battlefield completely subsided. However, they certainly did not obtain any useful information. As for the Uegakure village and the Kumigakure village, after their respective cages returned to the villages, they did not pay too much attention to the extremely high-level war that broke out in the direction of the Wind Country. They only hastily sent a small number of enbu to collect intelligence. Because, their attention is now all focused on military preparations. After all, Konoha really let the cat out of the bag in this joint Chunin exam. If they don't dare to take action against a Konoha that is much weaker than before, they would be unworthy of the title of Kage, and their ninja village would be disgraced to be one of the 5 major ninja villages. What they should pay more attention to at this moment is to obtain enough benefits for their respective ninja villages. And it just so happens that Konoha and the Land of Fire, whose strength is not as strong as before, are their perfect targets. As for Konoha, although it was not too far from the battlefield, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen's attention was distracted by other things. Under the advice of the 2 advisory elders, Crouching Dragon and Phoenix Hatchling, they put all their energy into investigating the Hyuga branches who had mysteriously disappeared in the village. After Hyuga Mukai and other branch families left, which was almost the same time when Danzo killed the Kirigakure people, the white Zetsu clones who remained in Konoha village and used the disguise technique also left silently. So, in the evening of that day, the Hyuga clan realized something was wrong. At first, the main families didn't think the matter was that serious, but when they used the bird in a cage curse to try to locate these Hyuga branches but failed, and then wanted to remotely destroy the Byakugan of the Hyuga branches that had lost their traces, these main families who usually acted arrogantly and domineeringly finally realized that the matter was serious. The bird in the cage curse has failed for the first time in 1,000 years. The panicked Hyuga clan members, after several attempts, finally confirmed the fact they were unwilling to believe. Therefore, they had no choice but to compromise even if they did not want the village to interfere in their clan's internal affairs. Therefore, they hurriedly asked the clan leader Hyuga Ryuan to inform the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen about this matter. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was preparing to rest at home, immediately realized the seriousness of the matter after learning about this. He immediately summoned the two advisory elders, Crouching Dragon and Phoenix Hatchling, and also sent the Anbu to the root base to inform his good friend Shimura Danzo. However, this notice caused trouble again. Because Danzo led the root out in full force, the root base was empty at this time. Therefore, the Anbu ninja who went to inform Danzo naturally could not enter the root base. Okay. This is bad news. When Sarutobi Hiruzen arrived with Crouching Dragon and Phoenix Hatchling and forced their way into the deserted root base, he instantly realized that something was wrong. Knowing what kind of style his good buddy was, and thinking about the intelligence sent by the perception squad this afternoon, Sarutobi Hiruzen was so furious that he almost couldn't breathe and was directly angered to death by Danzo's outrageous actions. So, on the one hand, he sent a large number of Anbu ninjas to search for the traces of the Hyuga branches in the Land of Fire. On the other hand, he personally put on armor and went to the battle site sensed by the perception squad. He is concerned about his good friend and wants to stop Danzo before he makes a big mistake. However, these are just Sarutobi Hiruzen's extravagant hopes. When Sarutobi Hiruzen burst out at his fastest speed and caught up with the Anbu team he sent out to investigate the situation near dusk, and then rushed with them to the place that had turned into a rift, he of course found nothing. After all, the people of the Hidden Mist village had cleaned up the battlefield and destroyed any traces of the battle that could leak intelligence. The only thing left for Sarutobi Hiruzen was the terrain that had been completely changed by the battle and the chaotic chakra aura that had not yet completely dissipated. In the end, he could only come to the conclusion that a battle involving at least 100 people had broken out here, and he judged that there were at least 2 or more strong men among them, and the collision of the battle changed the terrain here. As for his good friend whose whereabouts he could not find, he could only let him go for the time being and send Anbu ninjas to look for him later. After all, he was the Hokage of Konoha village and could not leave the village for a long time. However, he already had a vague feeling about Danzo's whereabouts. Although he had guessed that Danzo and his route had met with an accident, as a good friend, he still held a faint hope deep in his heart. I hope that Danzo can suddenly return to Konoha one day in the future. As for the traces of the Hyuga branches, let alone the traces of White Zetsu's even fly technique, how could these ordinary Anbu ninjas be able to discover it? Therefore, Konoha and the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen are destined to gain nothing. Chapter 376. And precisely because of this, the current Hyuga clan leader, Hyuga Ryuan, finally resigned without obtaining any clues, and then passed the position of clan leader to his eldest son, Hyuga Hayashi, and made his youngest son, Hyuga Hisashi, who had been demoted to a branch family, the person in charge of the branch family to discipline those restless branch families. Moreover, the Hyuga main families implemented an extremely harsh high-pressure policy against the remaining Hyuga branches who remained in Konoha. You know, as the high and mighty main family, they would not care whether these branch families sincerely submit to them. After all, in their eyes, the branch families that are cursed as birds in a cage are nothing more than dogs raised by their main family. This further intensified the conflict between those members of the branch family who originally had a glimmer of hope for the main family and were therefore not taken away by Hyuga Mukai, and also laid a fuse that was easily ignited for the drastic changes in the Hyuga clan in the future. However, the Hyuga clan would never have anticipated at this time that they would be requested by the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen to support the Kirigakure battlefield in the Ninja World War that would break out in the near future, because Konoha was under siege from many sides and was short of manpower. After all, the Byakugan was extremely powerful in dealing with the Kirigakure village's iconic Kirigakure jutsu. These corrupt Hyuga main families would never have expected that in the near future, they would encounter those mysteriously missing Hyuga branches, now the Otsutsuki clan of the Hidden Mist village, on the battlefield of the mist, and be hit head-on by them, causing them to lose a large number of Byakugan that they once treasured. Pure Land. At the moment when Uchiha Madara was finally killed by Seiji, an old man with 2 horns on his head, a red circle pattern in the center of his forehead, brown hair and a long beard, wearing the Otsutsuki clan's iconic white robe, slowly opened his eyes. The lavender ripples in the old man's eyes were like the ripples on a calm lake, or the slight waves caused by the breeze blowing across the sea, rippling in circles, and each ripple was flashing with a faint purple glow, just like the brilliant stars in the night sky, mysterious and profound. Looking more closely, the old man's robe is not completely white, but has 6 black megatama-shaped patterns on his chest, and a red spiral mark on his back, with black megatama neatly arranged in a 9-square grid below. This old man is none other than the rebellious son of Seiji and Kagaya, Otsutsuki Hago Romo, also known as the Sage of the 6 Paths. Otsutsuki Hago Romo opened his eyes and looked at the soul of Uchiha Madara that appeared in the Pure Land. His eyes condensed slightly, and the purple ripples inexplicably spread a little. Is this generation's Indra also dead? Otsutsuki Hago Romo murmured to himself in a low voice. It seems that something unexpected has happened in the ninja world, and something extraordinary has happened. The last time Otsutsuki Hago Romo woke up from his slumber was because he sensed the appearance of the Rin-Egan, and the body of the 10 Tails, also known as the Outer Path Demon statue, which had been sealed on the moon, was summoned back to the ninja world. Therefore, he certainly has a certain understanding of Uchiha Madara, the reincarnation of Indra. However, due to his own situation and the complex emotions towards his 2 sons, Indra and Ashura, he chose not to intervene in the real world. After checking that there was no problem with the seal on his mother Kagaya Otsutsuki on the moon, he continued to fall into a deep sleep. I have to say that Kyoji's speculation about Otsutsuki Hago Romo is quite accurate. The strength of Otsutsuki Hago Romo far exceeds what Otsutsuki Hamura said at the beginning. He not only has the ability to interfere with the real world, but also has the ability to transcend life and death from the Pure Land, appear in the ninja world and directly exert his power. Or to be more precise, just by giving the 6 Paths Yang power and the 6 Paths Yin power to others, the 6 Path Sage Otsutsuki Hago Romo can temporarily create 2 6 Paths level powerhouses. How can his strength be compared to that of an ordinary 6 Paths level warrior? Not to mention that Otsutsuki Hago Romo also mastered the bloodline network. However, what Otsutsuki Hamura said was not completely wrong. At least in terms of Otsutsuki Hamura's attitude towards interfering in the real world, there was nothing wrong with what he said. Indeed, Otsutsuki Hago Romo, who is sleeping in the Pure Land, is only concerned about a few things. One is the matter related to the seal of his mother Otsutsuki Kagaya, the other is the arrival of the outsiders that his mother Otsutsuki Kagaya fears, and the last one is the ninja world that he deeply loves. As for the rest, they are not within his scope of concern. And precisely because of this, he was indifferent to the constant reincarnation struggles between his 2 sons, Indra and Ashura, and turned a blind eye to the wars in the ninja world that had hardly stopped for thousands of years. After all, these were nothing compared to what he cared about. Moreover, he was in a dormant state most of the time. Only when he sensed a familiar breath or a sign of danger, or thought about something related to the seal of the moon, would he wake up from his sleep and pay attention. Therefore, after the physical death of the 6 Path Sage Otsutsuki Hago Romo, he never thought of inserting or intervening in the development of the ninja world. Even when it came to the large-scale war that swept across the entire ninja world, he only believed that it was a necessary experience for the growth of the ninja world. Otsutsuki Hago Romo narrowed his eyes slightly, frowned slightly, and slowly raised his hands, revealing the sun and moon-shaped marks on the palms that symbolized the 6 Yang forces and the 6 Yin forces. Then, he stretched out his right hand and gently grasped the immortal staff that was placed horizontally on his crossed legs. Although he is no longer the 10 Tails Jinchuriki, and the 10 Tails is no longer in his body, but Otsutsuki Hago Romo, who has perfectly mastered the Yin-Yang release, that is, the 6 Paths of Yang and the 6 Paths of Yin, his strength is still extremely terrifying. The immortal's staff, which is pitch black and shaped like the sun at the top and the moon at the bottom, is flashing a mysterious light in Otsutsuki Hagoromo's hand. Then, Otsutsuki Hago Romo slowly raised his arm, pointed the front end of the staff at the void in front of him, and waved it gently. The next moment, a deep and dark gap like black pixel fragments quietly emerged. Otsutsuki Hago Romo stared at the gap, and the purple light in his samsara eyes flickered slightly. Suddenly, all the scenes in the ninja world turned into pictures that began to unfold before his eyes as his gaze penetrated deeper into it. Soon, Otsutsuki Hago Romo saw Uchiha Madara's body, and then naturally saw Seiji who was cleaning the battlefield. Chapter 377. And when Otsutsuki Hago Romo saw Seiji's appearance, he was naturally a little dazed and slightly shocked. When did an Otsutsuki with a bloodline evolve to such a level appear in the ninja world? A descendant of Hamura. Otsutsuki Hago Romo looked at Seiji's sky-blue eyes that were exactly the same as his brother's, and whispered to himself, but what's the matter with his bloodline? It has even surpassed Hamura. Otsutsuki Hago Romo was a little puzzled, as such a person should not appear in the ninja world, but he could easily tell that Seiji was not an outsider in the ninja world, nor was he the people from heaven that his mother Kaguya feared. However, if he is a descendant of his younger brother Hamura, the upper limit of his bloodline should be Hamura, and it should not be the case that he surpasses Hamura in terms of bloodline. As for evolving towards the bloodline of his mother Kaguya Otsutsuki, it would require his bloodline with Hamura to be combined into one and then sublimated. But it is obvious that there is no power belonging to Seiji in his body. Otsutsuki Hago Romo sighed, and then stopped thinking about it further, nor did he continue to pay more attention to Kiyoshi. After all, Kiyoshi had not caused any damage to the ninja world at the moment, and was not within the scope of his concern. After all, this was only the first time he paid attention to Kingxi, and he did not see Kingxi's fighting process. Therefore, based on his rough observation just now, Kingxi could not pose any threat to him, let alone a threat to the ninja world. He is just a descendant of Hamura and the Samsara Eye. You have to know that the seal of his mother Kaguya Otsutsuki and those people in heaven are more important in his heart. Not to mention, he also has the ability to endow his bloodline descendants with the power of the six paths and mass-produce six-path level strong men. Even if Ching Si really does something weird later, he is fully confident that he can suppress Ching Si in time. Otsutsuki Hago Romo lightly brushed his chest with his left hand. Under the robe, there was a wound that had not fully healed for 1,000 years. That was the wound left when he used the ultimate yin-yang escape to forcibly split the 10 tails belonging to Otsutsuki Kaguya and then separated it from his body. Even though his body was dead, he now only existed in the Pure Land in the form of a soul, and he could not completely get rid of it. Even though I am my mother's son, the 10 tails belongs only to her. Not only that, even the huge and violent chakra contained in the 10 tails body, in essence, also completely belongs to my mother. What I have gained is only the ability to temporarily control it after sealing my mother. It is far from true ownership. Otsutsuki Hago Romo recalled the past and sighed again. If I hadn't practiced the natural energy of the ninja world, mastered the six-path senjutsu, and finally realized this, then I'm afraid that the end that awaits me would be that I would be completely eroded and assimilated by the 10 tails chakra, and eventually become the carrier of my mother's consciousness. Countless thoughts surged through his mind, but just when these thoughts were about to spread like wildfire and continue to extend and expand, all thoughts were forcibly cut off by Otsutsuki Hago Romo. Then, he looked deeply at Seiji, who had returned to the hidden mist village. His eyes were as deep as the sea, and then he lightly stroked his immortal staff again towards the front. The immortal staff drew a graceful arc in the air, and wherever the tip of the staff passed, a faint light flickered. The Pure Land returned to silence again, and Otsutsuki Hago Romo fell into a deep sleep again, no longer paying attention to the disturbances in the ninja world. However, what Otsutsuki Hago Romo didn't know was that Seiji's true identity was not what he thought, and he also had no idea what he had missed this time and what kind of mixed doubles fight he would face in the future. Of course, that's not the case. After all, if Otsutsuki Hago Romo really cared about the affairs of the ninja world wouldn't have seen all these bullshit over the past 1,000 years. Seiji probably wouldn't have had any chance to grow up, and Kaguya wouldn't have any chance of escaping in the future. Therefore, we can only say that every sip and every bite is predestined. Seiji, who had already returned to the hidden mist village, looked up at the sky as if he sensed something when Otsutsuki Hagoromo's gaze lingered on him for a long time. It seemed that in the distance, at the top of the high and vast sky, a pair of purple eyes filled with inexplicable power and mystery were slowly opening, like a god overlooking all living beings, watching the ninja world. King C realized something in an instant. It seemed that the death of Uchiha Madara had awakened his rebellious son in the Pure Land. Kyoji's perception of the six-path sage Otsutsuki Hago Romo, who had sealed Kaguya for 1,000 years, was extremely poor. After all, Kaguya was still his mother no matter what. Of course, Kyoji was not too afraid of the awakening of Otsutsuki Hago Romo. Although his current strength might still be a little short of that of the rebellious son, at most he would just be at a disadvantage, which was not a big problem. However, after waiting for a while, King C did not see any further action from Otsutsuki Hago Romo, and the alarm bell ringing deep in his heart gradually subsided. It seems that Otsutsuki Hago Romo didn't notice anything wrong. Then, in the next second, King C's figure disappeared from the spot, leaving behind only a low hum with a hint of melancholy, resentment, dissatisfaction and resentment, which echoed in the air for a long time. Otsutsuki Hago Romo. Chapter 378. Time quickly came to the end of Kirigakure 44. In the past 6 months or so since the end of the joint Chunin exam, the gunpowder filling the powder keg of the ninja world is almost overflowing. A new ninja world war could break out at any time and anywhere. All that's missing is a spark that would ignite this powder keg. And at this very moment, in the sand village of the Wind Country, a major event that will have a profound impact on the ninja world is about to happen. The howling wind swept past, raising huge waves of sand. Looking around, the whole world seemed to be swallowed up by the endless yellow sand and dust, and it was chaotic and hazy. This is what most areas of the Kingdom of Wind look like, suffering from the ravages of wind and sand and extremely harsh climate all year round. In the sky, the thick dust was like a thick curtain, blocking the sunlight and making the day that should have been bright and warm become dim and gloomy. Under the blowing of strong wind, sand poured down like dense raindrops, hitting the body and making bursts of noise. Walking on the road, every step will sink you into a deep sand pit, making it extremely difficult to move forward. And in the heart of the desert of the Land of Wind lies the Sand Village, one of the 5 major ninja villages in the ninja world. But even in the Sand Village, the villagers living there cannot completely escape the invasion of the sandstorm. The walls of the house were mottled by wind and sand, and the window glass was covered with a thick layer of dust, making it difficult to see the scenery outside. Although ninjutsu was often used for cleaning, the mountains of sand on the streets still left people with nowhere to stand. Only the occasional sand ninjas passed by and quickly shuttled through the streets, their figures looming in the wind and sand. Therefore, it is no wonder that the third Kazekage Tessa and the ninjas of Sunagakure covet the Land of Fire and Konoha village. After all, the environment in the Land of Wind is really too harsh. In a shadow below the Feng Ying building, a gloomy red-haired boy looked up and stared at the location of Feng Ying's office, his heart full of hatred. He seemed to be able to see through the thick layers of sandy walls and see the third-generation Feng Ying Tisha handling government affairs in Feng Ying's office. This red-haired boy is none other than the genius puppeteer of the Sand Village, Scorpion of the Red Sand. The death of my father and mother was not just because of that damn war and that damn Konoha White Fang Hotaki Sakumo. Scorpion slowly closed his eyes, his inner emotions fluctuating violently. If it weren't for your decision in the last Ninja World War, it led to the complete defeat of Sunagakure. My father and mother wouldn't have died in the war with Konoha. So, as the Kazekage, you cannot escape the blame. Scorpion thought hatefully, murderous intent unconsciously overflowing from his eyes, and then dissipated in an instant. The death of his father Yumu and his mother Lyoyu left an irreparable trauma in the heart of the then young Scorpion. Originally, the 3 of them had agreed that after Yumu and Lyoyu returned from their mission, they would take a family photo together. However, Scorpion waited in the village for a long time but could not wait for his parents to return. In the end, all he got was his grandmother Chiyo's words while holding back her grief: "Your father and mother suddenly had to go on other missions, and they will have to wait for a while before they can come back." Initially, the naive Scorpion didn't know what this meant, and believed what Cho said. However, day after day of waiting finally made him disappointed. As he grew older and more mature, he already understood the true whereabouts of his parents. So, he started investigating in the Sand Village alone without telling Cho. In fact, Chiyo's original intention was to give Scorpion some hope and let him have a relatively happy childhood. Therefore, Cho, who did not want Scorpion to be exposed to hatred too early, concealed everything and told Scorpion nothing. She planned to wait until Scorpion grew up before telling him the truth. However, as a high-ranking official in the Sand Village, she was too busy and had little time to spend with the young Scorpion. Moreover, She also ignored Scorpion's changes in thinking. Therefore, under this kind of loneliness, Scorpio's thoughts become more and more extreme. What's more, Scorpion's status as the grandson of Elder Cho, coupled with his unrivaled talent as a puppeteer in the Sand Village, gives him very high authority in the village. Therefore, even though Scorpion was investigating alone in secret, he had gradually figured out over the years what mission his parents were carrying out back then, and he also learned that the murderer who killed his parents was none other than Konoha White Fang Hitaki Sakumo. However, Hitaki Sakumo had committed suicide at home a few years ago. Although Hitaki Sakumo has a son named Hitaki Kakashi, Sasori does not bother to transfer his hatred to White Fang's son. Therefore, Scorpio transferred the target of hatred to another person. In Sasori's opinion, if it weren't for the many wrong decisions made by the third Kazekage Tessa during the Second Ninja World War, the Sand Village would not have had to fight a life-and-death battle with Konoha. Also, if the third Kazekage Tessa and his disciple Raza had not been injured and did not participate in the battle, his parents would not have become the commanders of the surprise attack on Konoha. Therefore, the third Kazekage Tessa must bear a large share of the blame for the death of his parents. It would certainly be a bit of an exaggeration to say that he is the murderer, but it is definitely not an exaggeration to say that he has an unshirkable responsibility. More importantly, after the death of his parents, except Cho and Ebizo, the rest of the Tsunagakure high-ranking officials, including the third Kazekage Tessa, did not support revenge against Konoha. Although Cho had a high prestige in Tsunagakure, and the Tsunagakure high-ups had no choice but to agree to continue fighting with Konoha because they could not persuade Cho, but Iron Sand, who had the title of the strongest Kazekage, never appeared on the battlefield again. Scorpion made a deduction based on the intelligence he collected about the battle situation at that time. In fact, Sand Village was only one step away from victory. If the third Kazekage Iron Sand could appear on the battlefield, then even if his injuries had not healed, his invincible magnetic escape technique in large-scale group battles alone would be able to tip the scales of victory completely towards Sand Village. Therefore, Scorpion believes that the third Kazekage, Tessa, has completely lost his faith as a Sand Ninja, and he is not worthy of continuing to bear the title of Kazekage. Chapter 379. The resentment towards the third Kazekage Tessa gradually turned into hatred, and finally erupted deep in Scorpion's heart. Therefore, Scorpion finally made his decision. He wanted to kill the third Kazekage Tessa and avenge his parents. After making up his mind, Scorpion began to design his assassination plan. At this time, Scorpion's strength has reached the level of an elite Jonin, and as the most talented puppeteer in the history of the Sand Village, Scorpion can even fight against the cage level with his precise and skillful control of various puppets. However, the third Kazekage Tessa does master the bloodline limit that is most effective against puppeteers, the magnetic escape technique. Therefore, a head-on confrontation is disadvantageous. Scorpio must find an opportunity to make a detour. So, after months of intelligence gathering and waiting, Scorpion finally found this opportunity today. Scorpion waited quietly in the shadows under the Fengying building. Not long after, the figure of the third Kazekage Iron Sand appeared directly outside the Kazekage building, and then the Iron Sand quickly gathered at his feet and carried him towards the Sand Village prison located in the corner. And in the prison, imprisoned is the strategic weapon of their Sand Village, the one-tailed Jinchuriki Banfuku. Monk Banfuku is already very old, and although he is still alive, it is very difficult for him to move. Therefore, in order to prevent him as a Jinchuriki from going berserk, the Tsunagakure high-ranking officials ordered him to be imprisoned in this prison. However, what the Sand Village high-ranking officials didn't know was that Shikaku, the one-tailed fox within Bunfuku's body, had already recognized him during their long time together. Although the two of them didn't reach a true reconciliation due to Bunfuku's unwillingness to fight with others, in a sense, Bunfuku could be called a perfect Jinchuriki. After all, not only does he have a good relationship with Shikaku, the one-tailed beast in his body, but he can also use his extremely strong will to completely control Shikaku's violent-tailed beast chakra. However, the Tsunagakure high-ranking officials turned a blind eye to this. They were short-sighted, and always worried that the old Jinchuriki would die at any time, and then be eroded by the tailed beasts before death because of the weakening of the seal or lack of consciousness, which would cause the tailed beasts to run rampage. Therefore, while they imprisoned Bunfuku, they also asked Tisha to go and reinforce the seal on Bunfuku every once in a while. Today happens to be the day when the third Kazekage Tisha goes to reinforce the seal. And this is exactly the perfect opportunity that Scorpio has been waiting for. You know, Reinforcing the seal of the tailed beast Jinchuriki is a very chakra-consuming thing, and Scorpion's plan is to take advantage of the time when the third Kazekage iron sand has consumed a lot of chakra and has not had time to recover, and lure him from the village to the location he preset, and then take away iron sand, who is not in intact condition. Looking at the third Kazekage iron sand who was flying towards the sand prison at a rapid speed, Scorpion showed a smile of revenge that was about to be taken, and then he formed seals with his hands. Subconscious Sand Manipulation Technique. Unlock. As an inexplicable wave spread out, the look under the mask of an Anbu ninja in the sand village suddenly changed. Inside the sand prison, the third Kazekage Tessa consumed a large amount of chakra and once again reinforced the seal on Fenfuku. At this time, an Anbu suddenly appeared behind Tessa and knelt on one knee. Lord Kazekage. The Anbu said in a deep voice, revealing a hint of happiness in his tone. The Anbu received intelligence. A very large chakra metal mine was discovered in the land of wind. However, the location of the mine is very deep underground, and it requires you and Lord Rose's magnetic escape to mine it. The pupils of the third Kazekage Tisha shrank instantly after hearing this. What did he hear? The Anbu discovered a massive chakra metal mine. Tisha was immediately overjoyed. God bless the sand village. The discovery of this chakra metal mine came at the right time. You know, chakra metal is very rare in the ninja world, and rarity means expensive. So once the sand village owns this large-scale chakra metal mine, funding issues will no longer be a constraint on the development of the sand village. God have mercy on them, their sand village is so poor, and the daimyo of Wind Country is an extremely stingy person. He has cut the military expenditure of their sand village again and again. Especially after the Second Ninja World War, the sand village, which failed to achieve any decent results, had the daimyo of Wind Country reduce its military expenditure by 1/3 at one time. Therefore, out of confidence in his own strength and trust in the ANBU ninjas, the third Kazekage Tetsusa, who possessed the invincible blood limit of magnetism in the sand village, did not give it much thought, nor did he inform his disciple Raza, who also had the ability of magnetism, and hurriedly set off with the ANBU ninja who delivered the information. However, if the chakra metal mine is really deep underground, how did the ANBU find it? And if it is really a large-scale chakra metal mine, how could it not be discovered by the sand village until today? There are too many things wrong here. However, Tisha was dazzled and blinded by the huge profits of the chakra metal mine and did not think that there was anything wrong with it. In other words, Tisha, the strongest wind shadow, doesn't think that anything beyond his control will happen in the kingdom of wind. Therefore, Tisha certainly did not notice that when he stepped on Tisha and flew quickly in the air with the Anbu to the destination, the Anbu's eyes kept flashing with brilliance. Under the leadership of the Anbu ninja, the third Kazekage Tisha continued to move deeper into the desert with sparks and lightning. Not long after, about 30 kilometers away from the sand village, the third Kazekage Tessa, under the guidance of the Anbu ninja, met Scorpion, who had set out ahead and had been waiting here for a while. Scorpion! Why are you here? Tisha already felt that something seemed to be wrong at this time, but out of trust in Scorpion, he still brought the Anbu ninja down from the air and came to Scorpion to ask. Chapter 380. After all, no matter what, Scorpion is a genuine sand village ninja. His grandmother Cho was the most prestigious advisory elder in the village, and his great-uncle Ebizo was also an advisory elder in the village. Even his deceased parents Imu and Junya were his right-hand men in the past. Although he had some rifts with Cho and Ebizo in the past few years over the issue of revenge for Imu and Otsutsuki, in Tisha's opinion, everything he did was for the benefit of the village, and he believed that both Cho and Ebizo would understand him. Therefore, in the eyes of the third Kazekage Tessa, Scorpion can be said to be an absolute family member. He even thought that once Scorpion's strength reached the level of Cage, he would let Scorpion become a high-ranking official in the Sand Village, and after Cho retired, he would take over Chiyo's position and continue to assist him. Therefore, although he was somewhat confused about the appearance of Scorpion, the third Kazekage Tessa did not think too deeply about it. After all, he did not think that Scorpion, who was truly his own man, would do anything to him. In other words, in front of the puppeteer Scorpion, he had the incomparable confidence that he could suppress everything as he mastered the magnetic escape technique. However, the development of the matter was beyond Tisha's control. Not only did he not get an answer from Scorpion, but he was backstabbed by the Anbu ninja standing next to him. The Anbu ninja inadvertently exchanged glances with Scorpion, and then moved back slightly. Next second, He simply took out a kunai that was flashing with purple-black light, and with the help of the wind-style chakra, he fiercely stabbed the third Kazekage Tessa in the waist. Although Tisha realized something was wrong at the last moment, it was too late for him to dodge as he was completely unprepared for the Anbu ninja who brought him here. The extremely close distance between the two allowed him to avoid the vital points only at the last moment. The iron sand defense on Tisha's body was instantly pierced through by the kunai enhanced by the wind-style chakra after the deliberate backstab. The kunai filled with poison brushed past Tisha's waist, bringing out a handful of purple-black smelly blood. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of black blood and iron sand, his eyes filled with disbelief. He could not believe that the Anbu, who were supposed to be loyal to him, would attack him from behind. What made him feel as if he was falling into an icy cave was that the stab in the back contained a deadly poison that he had never seen in the village. Moreover, in his current state, he was unable to slow down the spread of the poison in his body at all. Tisha knew that in the Sand Village, only Elder Cho had the ability to mix such a poison. Therefore, he figured out everything in an instant. This was a trap carefully prepared for him, and Cho would never be able to do such a cruel thing to him. After all, he was the Kazekage, and as an advisory elder, Cho was not such a fool. Then it is obvious that the one who attacked him was Scorpio, who was better than his teacher and whom he considered to be one of his own and a legitimate member. However, even though he had figured everything out, he was powerless to change the situation. The poison that Scorpion had carefully prepared for him, coupled with the fact that he had just consumed a large amount of chakra to reinforce the seal of the Jinkra key, as well as the backstab attack from the Anbu ninja, had directly hit him and left him without any possibility of resistance. After a successful attack, the Anbu ninja and Scorpion quickly retreated, leaving the third Kazekage Tessa standing there helpless and furious. After all, they didn't want to be taken away by Tessa's dying counterattack after the assassination was successful. The toxin that the Scorpion carefully prepared for Tisha spread rapidly along the path of Tisha's blood flow at an astonishing speed like a surging flood. In the blink of an eye, this deadly toxin had spread to every corner of its body. Purple-black blood began to ooze out of Tisha's eyes, ears, nostrils, and mouth. The black liquid kept pouring out like a flood that broke through a dam. The body of the third Kazekage Tisha became limp and weak in a short period of time, and finally, he fell heavily to the ground as if all his strength had been drained away, and after twitching slightly for a few times, his life force disappeared. The strongest Kazekage died in such a trivial manner, and died at the hands of a puppeteer who, in his eyes, was completely suppressed by his magnetic escape. Scorpion stood quietly, staring coldly at the lifeless body of the third Kazekage Tisha who was lying not far away. His face was as cold as 1,000-year-old ice, and he didn't seem to have any emotion at all. No one knew whether he was happy or sad at this moment. The red hair fluttered in the desert wind. Scorpion murmured in a low voice. Although the voice was not loud, it was particularly clear in the desert, third-generation Kazekage. This is the price you should pay. At this time, the Anbu ninja instantly came in front of Scorpion and half knelt down respectfully. His attitude was even more respectful than when he faced the third Kazekage Tessa, Scorpion-sama. Scorpion collected his thoughts and praised calmly with an expressionless face, "Thank you for your hard work. You did a great job." It turned out that this Anbu ninja was subdued by Scorpion several years ago when he was just an ordinary chunin. After he was selected to join the Anbu, Scorpion performed a sealing technique called subconscious sand manipulation technique on his brain, passing a tiny needle through his memory center and completely sealing all his memories related to Scorpion. Because of this, after Scorpion lifted the seal, he once again became Scorpion's loyal fan under the identity of an Anbu ninja, and became the most crucial part of Scorpion's entire plan to assassinate the third Kazekage Tessa. And the final outcome was just as Scorpion had planned. The third Kazekage Tessa was in a weak state after the reinforcement of the Jinkraki seal. He was first successfully tricked out of the village by his subordinates, and then successfully attacked from behind. Iron Sand, who was known as the strongest wind shadow of all generations, fell so easily into Scorpion's plan. Even Scorpion himself didn't do anything at all. He just provided some poison that was enough to kill Iron Sand. Chapter 381. Scorpion gently patted the Anbu ninja who was half kneeling in front of him, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The next moment, the Anbu ninja had his neck cut by Scorpion. You know, he is the only person who knows the truth about the death of the third Kazekage Tessa, and only when he dies, can Scorpion truly let go of his worry. After all, a human puppet cannot speak. After sealing the bodies of the third Kazekage Tisha and the Anbu ninjas into the scroll, Scorpion slowly disappeared in the wind and sand. He would never go back to the sand village again. After all, there was nothing there worth him staying for. As for his only two relatives, Cho and Ebizo, Scorpion was not planning to see them again, so he would just simply wish them a long life. After all, on the one hand, Ebizo was not very close to him to begin with, and on the other hand, after he learned the truth about his parents, he felt some resentment deep in his heart towards his grandmother Cho for hiding the matter. If Cho had told him the truth about his parents and accompanied him as he grew up, although his heart would still be filled with hatred, he would never have developed such an extreme personality. Before killing the third Kazekage Tessa, Sasori had already made up his mind to become a rebel ninja and pursue what he believed in as eternal art, and after his plan succeeded, he would not waver. His faith solid as a rock. The day after the death of the third Kazekage Tessa, the people of Sand Village were surprised to find that their invincible third Kazekage had disappeared. Originally, the Sand Village leaders thought that Iron Sand had an urgent matter to deal with outside and did not have time to inform them. However, when another day passed and there was still no news of Iron Sand, the Sand Village was in an uproar. The disappearance of the third Kazekage Tessa has had a huge impact on the Sand Village. After all, Iron Sand is the strongest Kazekage of all time and the strongest fighting force in the Sand Village today. The Tsunagakure high-ranking officials sent their subordinates and Anbu to search for Iron Sand in secret again for nearly a month, and finally they had to reluctantly admit that their invincible Kazekage was really missing. Therefore, under this consensus, the Tsunagakure high-level officials were divided into two factions, and fierce internal debate broke out. One party believes that the third Kazekage Tetsusa had been assassinated and is dead, and the top leaders should immediately select a suitable candidate to succeed the fourth Kazekage and lead the Sand Village out of its current predicament. The other side believed that with the strength of the third Kazekage Tessa, it would be impossible for him to disappear without a trace in the territory of the Land of Wind without any sound. They simply did not believe that there existed a ninja with such strength in the ninja world. They were afraid that even Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha could not do this. Therefore, the third Kazekage Tetsusa must have been held back by something or was temporarily trapped somewhere, and one day in the future, their invincible third Kazekage will finally return to his loyal Sand Village. Just like this, the two parties with different opinions kept arguing in the high-level meeting, and they were about to quarrel their dog brains out. At this critical moment, the advisory elder Cho stepped forward. Relying on her high prestige accumulated over the years in the Sand Village, she forcibly reconciled the two sides who were arguing and almost going to war, and finally made a decision that affected the situation in the entire ninja world. That is to start a war externally, divert internal conflicts within the village, and solve the deteriorating predicament of their Sand Village. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Sand Village finally set its target of war as Konoha. After all, of course one has to pick on the weak ones, and Konoha Village, which had lost the White Fang of Konoha, Hitaki Sakumo, and had recently exposed its lack of successors in the joint Chunin exam, had become the weak one in the eyes of the Tsunagakure high-ups. Moreover, from the perspective of the benefits that can be obtained, attacking the Land of Fire and Konoha Village will also bring the greatest benefits. Thus, the Third Ninja World War began because of the disappearance of the third Kazekage Tessa. Kirigakure Village. Water Shadow Building. Mizukage's office. The Mizukage's secretary, Chino Hojumi, walked in with a freshly written telegram. Mr. Mizukage. Chino handed the message to Seiji, an urgent message from White Zetsu from the Kingdom of Wind. With the emergence of White Zetsu, an excellent master of intelligence, although there are still many members of the Kirigakure Enbu carrying out the task of collecting intelligence in various parts of the ninja world, most of the intelligence collection within the major ninja villages has been handed over to White Zetsu. After all, White Zetsu, who possesses the art of disguise and the art of mayfly, is really useful. Moreover, there are special channels for transmitting messages between White Zetsu's clones, and between White Zetsu's clones and White Zetsu's original body, and this is much more efficient than simply relying on spies or something. Therefore, in the Land of Fire, the Land of Wind, the Land of Lightning, and the Land of Earth, there is a White Zetsu clone stationed there who is specifically responsible for sending telegrams to the Hidden Mist Village. After all, White Zetsu's real body is not always in the Hidden Mist Village, but he and Black Zetsu form the Black and White Yin and Yang, searching for the locations of the three sacred places for summoning beasts in the ninja world. Although Black Zetsu's skill points in concealing his aura and hiding have been maxed out, King Si was still not confident in letting him go alone to search in front of the three holy places. After White Zetsu and Black Zetsu merged, they would be able to exert considerable combat power. Therefore, he asked Black Zetsu to take White Zetsu along as well. After King Si picked up the telegram and read it, his eyes lit up instantly. Coming! The Ninja World War has finally broken out. So, he couldn't contain his surprise and stood up directly. Very good. China. Notify all the senior executives immediately. Hold a combat meeting on time at 2 p.m. Chapter 382. The conference room in the Shuiying building. All the top leaders of the Hidden Mist Village gathered together after a long absence. At this moment, the door of the conference room suddenly opened from the outside, and then Kiyoshi strode in, followed by the Mizukage's secretary Chino Hojumi and the Mizukage's assistant Yagura Karitachi. Lord Mizukage is here. Zigwashin Pufferfish, the captain of the 7 ninja swordsmen sitting in the front row, jumped up from his seat like a spring the same time King Si walked into the meeting room, and shouted loudly. The Watermelon Mountain Puffer Ghost stood straight with a serious and solemn expression. His eyes, which were as sharp as an eagle due to his long-term high position, now flashed with awe and respect as he saluted Ching Si. In the meeting room, the other Kirigakure high-level officials who were originally chatting with each other and greeting their acquaintances, immediately stopped talking and their expressions became solemn after hearing the hint from the Zigwashin Puffer demon. Then, they followed the actions of the Zigwashin Puffer Ghost and subconsciously stood up, casting admiring glances at King Si's walking figure. Even the third Mizukage Bing, the elder master, and some older generation Kirigakure high-ranking officials also stood up and expressed their respect for the current Mizukage with their actions. There is no other reason, just because King Si is worth it. And this is exactly the prestige that King Si has in the Hidden Mist Village now. After all, ever since the third Mizukage Bing gradually delegated the power of managing the Hidden Mist Village to Kiyoshi, the development of the Hidden Mist Village can be said to have entered a fast lane. Later, after Kiyoshi officially took office as the fourth Mizukage, along with his drastic reforms to the entire Hidden Mist Village, the development speed of the Hidden Mist Village has jumped several levels again on the basis of its already rapid development. Moreover, during this round of explosive development of the Hidden Mist Village, both ninjas of civilian origin and ninjas from families have reaped huge benefits from Kiyoshi's reforms. The civilian ninjas have acquired a large number of high-end ninjutsu or secret techniques that they had never dared to imagine or had no access to at all, while the family ninjas have not only made great progress in their own strength, but the foundation of their respective families has also become much deeper. More importantly, the overall economic situation of the Hidden Mist Village has also greatly improved. Not only has the village's financial situation improved, no longer needing to rely on the pitiful funds sent by the daimyo of the water country every year, but even the pockets of the villagers and the Hidden Mist ninjas have become fatter. You know, money is not everything, but without money, you can do nothing. Therefore, it is no wonder that King Ji has a very high status in the hearts of all the people in the Hidden Mist Village. Moreover, this is something that the previous 3 Mizukage had not been able to do. At the root of it all, who wouldn't respect a Mizukage who leads everyone towards strength and common prosperity? In terms of his overall contribution to the Hidden Mist Village, Kiyoshi can be said to have surpassed the third Mizukage, Bing, and the second Mizukage, Hojiki Gengetsu. Even the first Mizukage, Byakuren, might not have been able to catch up with Kiyoshi in the hearts of the people of the Hidden Mist Village if it had not been for his achievements in ending the war in the water country and establishing the Hidden Mist Village. King Si was slightly stunned by the Zigwashin Puffer Ghost's behavior, but he came to his senses in an instant, and a smile appeared on his face. He nodded in return to the Kirigakure high-ranking officials who showed respect to him. Although it was a bit abrupt, the flattery from the Watermelon Mountain Puffer Ghost was like a gentle spring breeze blowing across King Si's heart, making him extremely happy and giving him a feeling of comfort and pleasure. And which man can resist this extremely wonderful feeling? Ching Si came to the front of the conference room and stood still. Without any unnecessary nonsense, he started today's meeting directly. After all, when it comes to holding meetings, being swift and decisive has always been his usual style. Please take a seat. Everyone. King Si said softly. His voice was not very loud, but with the blessing of Chakra, it surrounded the ears of every high-ranking member of Kirigakure who was present. Information has come from the Sand Village in the Wind Country. Their Kazekage has disappeared in the territory of the Wind Country. Having said that, Ching Si couldn't help himself and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. I have to say, this incident is really funny. The third Kazekage Tessa, the strongest fighter in the Sand Village, actually disappeared in his home court. Although King C did not take Tessa's title of the strongest Kazekage of all time and his bloodline limit, magnetic release, seriously, King C had fought with him before and had a clear understanding of Tessa's general level of strength. What's more, the land of wind is full of deserts that allow iron sand to perfectly exert the power of his magnetic release, iron sand. And in King C's opinion, there is no problem for iron sand to fight in the desert and exert 120% of his strength. Therefore, King C does not think that in the current ninja world, apart from him, there are other ninjas who can kill Tisha silently. Yes, King C used the word kill here. Although the wording used in the intelligence was missing, Kyoshi had already confirmed the death of the third Kazekage Tetsusa. After all, the information from White Zetsu was that Tetsusa had been missing for more than a month, and during this period, the Sand Village had invested a lot of energy in looking for Tetsusa's whereabouts but still found nothing, not to mention that White Zetsu had searched the entire Wind Kingdom before passing the information back. King C still has great confidence in White Zetsu's ability to collect intelligence. Since White Zetsu cannot find any trace of the third Kazekage Tessa in the Land of Wind, then Tessa may have been killed and his body taken away. So, it's obvious. The third Kazekage, Tessa, was murdered by his own people in the Sand Village, so the process of his death did not cause any ripples or attract the attention of the Sand Village. And, more importantly, King C had some vague impression of the whereabouts of the third Kazekage Tisha. He vaguely remembered that in the shallow information about the world of Naruto that he had learned in his previous life, there was a defected puppeteer from Sand Village, Sasori, and the one he controlled was the human puppet of the third Kazekage, Iron Sand. Chapter 383. Therefore, the third Kazekage Iron Sand, who was known as the strongest Kazekage of all time in the Sand Village, is now dead. Even his corpse has been used by others. He truly cannot rest in peace even after death. King C suppressed all his thoughts and continued, his tone unconsciously becoming slightly excited. When the intelligence was passed back to the village, the Sand Village had secretly assembled a large number of elite troops and was preparing to launch a surprise attack on the Land of Fire. So, everyone! The Third Ninja World War has broken out. As soon as King C finished speaking, the atmosphere in the conference room suddenly became heated, and all the high-level officials of the Kirigakure present couldn't help but show some excitement. After all, they all knew more or less about the goal and plan of their own Mizukage to unify the ninja world, and the Kirigakure village had been constantly accumulating and reserving strength for the Ninja World War in recent years. During the last Ninja World War, the Hidden Mist village was able to sit on the mountain and watch the fight between two tigers. It sat far away overseas and watched the war in the ninja continent. Apart from taking some actions in the Land of Whirlpools and sending an elite team to participate in the war for a while, the rest of the time it remained motionless and developed in secret on the islands outside the ninja continent. However, bellicosity is, after all, an old tradition of the Hidden Mist ninja that has been passed down since the first generation. Therefore, the people of the Hidden Mist village have been looking forward to the Third Ninja World War for a long time. Not to mention the strength of the Hidden Mist village, which has reached its peak since its establishment more than 40 years ago. It is no exaggeration to say that the village is strong in both men and horses. King C raised his hands and pressed them down in mid-air. After everyone gradually calmed down from their restless state, he continued in a loud voice, this time, the Ninja World War. We, the Hidden Mist Village, are destined to participate. Although we, the Hidden Mist Village, won the first place in the joint Chunin exam not long ago, but after lying dormant for such a long time, the ninja world has almost forgotten the terror of our Hidden Mist ninjas. At this point, King C paused for a moment, looked around at everyone in the conference room, and suddenly raised his voice again, like a loud bell, echoing throughout the conference room, therefore. It's time. Let the name of Kirigakure resound throughout the ninja world again. Let Kirigakure truly stand at the top of the ninja world. Boom. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the conference room became so heated that it seemed like it could blow the roof off. The emotions of the crowd seemed to be completely ignited like a raging flame. Each of their faces was filled with fanaticism and excitement, and their eyes were shining with infinite longing and expectation for the future of the Hidden Mist village. They fully believe that under the leadership of the great fourth Mizukage Seiji, the name of the Hidden Mist will be praised by everyone in the ninja world, and the Hidden Mist village will regain its original glory and move towards even greater heights. When everyone's emotions gradually calmed down, King C let the Mizukage assistant Karitachi Yagura step forward and said, "Now, Yagura will explain to you a strategic deployment of our Kirigakure in this war." King C nodded to his younger brother, then took Chi no Kizuna to the side and handed the stage to him. Yagura also responded to Kingxi with a solemn nod, then put his hands together and slowly formed a seal. Water style, water curtain technique. Along with the output of Yagura's chakra, a large-scale and three-dimensional map of the ninja world appeared in the conference room in a moment. The map of the ninja world used by the Hidden Mist Village can be said to be the most complete one in the ninja world at present. You must know that this is a comprehensive map of the ninja world that has been collected by the Hidden Mist Village's Anbu for many years, plus the ones provided by Black Zetsu and White Zetsu. Its accuracy and detail are simply impossible for other ninja villages in the ninja world to possess. When the water curtain carrying the map of the ninja world completely stabilized, Yagura began his explanation. Normally, the formulation of the battle plan should be handed over to the Ministry of Defense, but after all, the incident happened suddenly, and CG had only received the information about the outbreak of the war not long ago. Therefore, the general battle strategy was first conveyed by Yagura, who was the assistant of the Mizukage, and the specific details were handed over to the Ministry of Defense for refinement after the meeting. The Bear Country is now completely under the rule of our Hidden Mist Village. Yagura was the first to inform everyone present of this news, so this time, the Ninja World War. We will still use the Bear Country as a springboard for attack and set up our forward command center. As Yagura spoke, the location of the Bear Country on the map lit up and then turned into the same color as the Water Country. During the Second Shinobi World War, the original ninja village of Bear Country, Star Ninja Village, was destroyed by the orders of the 3rd Mizukage Bing and a team led by Yagura. Therefore, in the following period of time, the Hidden Mist Village took advantage of the situation and began to infiltrate the Bear Country. After Kyoji took over the position of the 4th Mizukage, the Bear Country had completely turned into the shape of the Hidden Mist Village. From top to bottom, it was completely under the control of the Hidden Mist Village. However, we will not join the war right now. At present, only the Sand Village and the Hidden Leaf Village are involved in the war, while the Uegakure Village and the Kumigakure Village have not yet joined. Yagura changed the subject and continued, however, since the war has already broken out. Then it won't be too long before the Uegakure and Kumigakure take action. And what we in the Kirigakure have to do is to be prepared to join the war at any time, wait for the Ninja World War to be completely detonated, and then join the war. And our first target. Yagura suddenly paused, then pointed to a place on the map. It's here. The Land of Wind. And the Sand Village. That's right. The first target of attack that Kingji planned was the Sand Village in the Land of Wind, which was also the first place where the Ninja World War would break out. After all, the overall strength of the Sand Village was originally the weakest among the 5 major ninja villages. With the death of the 3rd Kazekage Tessa, it became even weaker. According to the information collected by the Mist Village, there should be only 4 cage-level fighters in the Sand Village at present: Cho, Ebizo, Raza and Hagura. At most, we can add the blessing of the one-tailed Jinchuriki who is about to be buried. Chapter 384. Therefore, for the Hidden Mist Village, of course they have to pick the softest persimmons first. Moreover, after taking over the Sand Village and the Wind Country, it would be extremely convenient to settle the feud with the Uegakure Village, or to jointly attack Konoha with the ninja troops from the Bear Country. The 4th Mizukage, CG, would not be like the 2nd Mizukage, Gengetsu, the mustached ruffian, who led his subordinates across most of the ninja world without any support and launched a surprise attack on the Land of Earth and the Uegakure village on the other side of the ninja world. Let's take over the Kingdom of Wind first, and then advance step by step to the Kingdom of Earth. Wouldn't that be great? As for the fact that the Sand Village and the Mist Village are too far away and are not suitable to be the first targets of attack, this is not a problem at all for the Mist Village. After all, don't forget that the Mist Village has a powerful weapon that can deploy ninja troops over ultra-long distances at any time, the Angkor Fortress. Therefore, among the 5 major ninja villages, the Sand Village, which is the weakest and has few resources, is very suitable as the target for CG to fire the first shot to unify the ninja world. Of course, there is another more important reason for choosing the Sand Village, and that is the problem of Kagaya's 10 tails. Although it will take some time to release Kagaya from the 6 Paths Chibaku Tensei, this does not prevent CG from making plans and preparations in advance. With the help of his elder son Black Zetsu, CG now has complete information and specific locations of all the tailed beasts. Among these tailed beasts, the 1 tail and the 7 tail are the only ones that are easiest to capture. Therefore, this is one of the reasons why CG chose to attack the Sand Village first. Soon, Yagura finished explaining the preliminary battle plan, and the following details will be handed over to the Defense Ministry's Permanent Defense Committee for optimization. The general plan is to go to Sand Village first, and then choose Kirigakure or Iwagakure depending on the situation. Konoha, which has the deepest foundation, is left for last. As for those small ninja villages, just crush them all the way. The only one that might have some obstacles is the Hidden Rain village with the demigod Hanzo of the Salamander. However, this is not a big problem. After all, the Hidden Rain village does not have any decent combat power except Hanzo, so just decapitate Hanzo. The task of beheading will be carried out by King C's disciples. This can be regarded as a reincarnation for Yahiko, Nagato, and Konan. After Yagura finished, the ministers of each department came forward one by one and reported on the progress of reserve of various war resources within their respective functional areas. Among them, Anbu Chongjian, after obtaining King C's consent, shared some of the information that could be made public with all the high-ranking officials of Kirigakure to the greatest extent possible. Yagura, on behalf of the mission department, announced to all the Kirigakure senior officials the rewards for the war missions they had initially formulated. Sanzu Amato, on behalf of the Kirigakure laboratory, explained the role that the latest chakra technology could play in the war. The medical department will be led by Deputy Director Minako Ringo, who will set up field hospitals and medical teams to ensure the safety of the lives of the Kirigakure ninjas to the greatest extent possible. As for the most important Ministry of Finance, there is nothing much to elaborate on. Under the operation of the Elder Master, the financial situation of the Hidden Mist Village can now be said to be extremely abundant. At this point, the huge war machine of the Hidden Mist Village officially started moving. Another moment passed. Seeing that the top leaders of Kirigakure had almost digested the information, King C asked, "Everyone, do you have any other questions?" At this time, Elder Chun Yu, who was in deep thought, suddenly asked subconsciously, "Lord Mizukage, should we inform the daimyo and obtain his consent?" However, before King C could answer, Chunyu reacted quickly, stood up, and smiled awkwardly at King C. The Hidden Mist Village is no longer the same as before and does not need funding from the daimyo at all. He was just thinking about other things and did not come to his senses for a while. Looking at Elder Harusame who stood up awkwardly, King C smiled at him gently and did not blame the old man who truly cared about the Hidden Mist Village and dedicated most of his life. After being silent for about 2 seconds, Ching Si decided to reveal a little to the Kirigakure high-level officials present so that they could be mentally prepared in advance. Therefore, he responded, "Although Kirigakure does not need the funds of the daimyo mansion now, and the daimyo mansion cannot control Kirigakure at present, I will ask the daimyo to agree, and he will definitely agree." The last sentence that King C said was quite meaningful. These Kirigakure high-ranking officials are the smartest of the smart. King C believes that he doesn't need to make things clear. Just a little hint will be enough for them to understand. They can definitely understand what he wants to express from his tone. When Uchiha Madara sealed 9-tailed beasts in 1 second during the Fourth War, White Zetsu reminded Uchiha Madara that the order of sealing should start from the one tail first. However, when the Akatsuki organization was capturing and sealing the tailed beasts, the Outer Path Demon statue had already opened its 2 eyes before sealing the one tail. Therefore, the statement about the order in which the Outer Path Demon statue sealed the tailed beasts is contradictory. But judging from the results, neither Akatsuki nor Uchiha Madara followed the sealing order from 1 tail to 9 tail in the end, so this is consistent with them. Chapter 385. The day after the meeting, King Ji received the latest information about the Third Ninja World War. Under the leadership of Elder Cho, the Sand Village, with Raza and Yekura as the vanguard, launched a surprise attack on the Fire Country and Konoha village with almost all their might. With the lessons learned from the last Ninja World War, although Konoha failed to stop the Sand Village ninjas who launched the war without declaration, one of the teams stationed at the border still sent the news back to Konoha village in time. Therefore, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen immediately responded. He called out Orochimaru, who had been staying in the laboratory all day, and appointed him as the commander to lead the vanguard composed of Anbu and civilian ninjas to stop the Sand Village. Immediately afterwards, he reached an agreement with the major ninja clans in a very short period of time, and then quickly formed an elite force of hundreds of people to support Orochimaru. An extremely brutal fight broke out. The Sand Village ninjas, holding on to the belief of revenge for the third Kazekage Tetsusa that was instilled in them by their superiors, were fearless and fought fiercely. The Konoha ninjas, with the determination to resist the invasion and defend their homeland, waged a series of life-threatening battles with the invading Sand Village ninjas. The war between Tsunagakure and Konoha reached its climax right at the beginning. Just as King C was flipping through the intelligence and constantly fine-tuning his plan in his mind, Black and White Zetsu, who had been out searching for the 3 sacred places for summoning beasts, returned to the hidden mist village. Father! Black Zetsu appeared in the Mizuki's office and whispered to Ciji, the location of Myaboku Mountain has been confirmed. Ching Si's eyes lit up instantly when he heard this. Great! What about the Dragon Cave and the Wet Bone Forest? We have some clues about the location of the Ryokai Cave. We should be able to confirm its location after some time. But I still haven't been able to find any clues about the Wet Bone Forest. Black Zetsu responded, his tone filled with a hint of uncertainty. The 2 holy places, Myabokuzen and Ryokudo, can be found in the ninja world, and over the past thousands of years, there have been many legends about the magic of these 2 holy places circulating in the ninja world. However, as the Wet Bone Forest is as famous as these 2 holy places, there is very little information circulating in the ninja world. It is as if it was fabricated out of thin air, and there is not even a trace of its existence. However, both Ciji and Black Zetsu are very sure about the existence of the Wet Bone Forest. After all, Tsunade, one of the 3 great ninjas of Konoha, has a summoning beast that is a slug from the Wet Bone Forest. King C thought for a moment, and then made up his mind. Now that he had found the exact location of Myaboku Mountain, he would first destroy this so-called Holy Land that had been stirring up trouble in the ninja world for thousands of years, and get some interest back for Kagaya. You have to know that the immortal toad in Myaboku Mountain was the mastermind who secretly obstructed and fanned the flames, instigating the rebellious son Hago Romo to rebel, and sealed his Kagaya for 1,000 years. As for Ryokai Cave and Wet Bone Forest, once Black Zetsu finds their specific locations, Kyoji will also settle accounts with them. After all, those 2 companies are likely to be involved as well, but they just put forward the toad from Myaboku Mountain as representatives. And there was a saying that King C thought was very well said, when it comes to revenge, you have to do it as early as possible, and try not to leave it overnight. Therefore, in order for his thoughts to come true, Myaboku Mountain should be destroyed today. Black Zetsu, lead the way. Let's go collect some interest from these stinky toads first. King C's eyes fixed and he said in a cold voice, with a strong murderous intent in his tone. Yes. Father. Black Zetsu responded respectfully, and then together with White Zetsu, he attached himself to King C. Since it is to avenge his mother Kagaya, then of course he has to go along. He even has to kill a few toads in Myaboku Mountain with his own hands. After all, when he is integrated with White Zetsu, he can also exert strong strength. Near the connection between Myaboku Mountain and the ninja world, King C's figure gradually became clearer and clearer, and slowly emerged from the void. So it's here. A sky blue light shone from Ching Si's eyes. Ching Si looked at the thick fog in front of him and sighed in a low voice, no wonder I couldn't sense it. The twisted space nodes, plus the natural energy gathered through the specific barrier, these toads really know how to enjoy it. After observing the spatial node leading to Mount Myaboku in the ninja realm from close range, Ciji instantly understood why he wanted to find Mount Myaboku through perception after learning about Kagaya's experience, but was unable to sense it. It turns out that the entrance to Myaboku Mountain is covered by a special barrier, which not only gathers a large amount of natural energy, but also distorts the space into a spatial maze, shielding the breath to the greatest extent. But now that I have found it, then this barrier can't stop me. King C's face was calm, and his perception continued to extend inward along the twisted space. The next second, the eye technique Takamaji Ehara was activated. King C, with the black and white Zetsu that had separated from his body, appeared directly in the space where Myaboku Mountain was located. A mysterious valley shrouded in thick fog. The figures of King C and Hibaiju appeared quietly. In the valley, the trees are lush and green with flourishing branches and leaves, like huge green umbrellas held up under the sky. Every leaf sparkles with emerald green light, as if carefully carved by nature, and the fertile land is like a piece of soft black satin, exuding the unique fragrance of soil. The breeze gently blows through the treetops, making a slight rustling sound, like a soft lullaby. Occasionally, the sound of birds singing in the woods adds a bit of vitality and vigor to the quiet atmosphere. The whole space is like a secluded paradise. Ha! What a great Myaboku Mountain! Feeling the extremely rich natural energy in this space, King C couldn't help but sneer, breaking the original quiet and peace. No wonder the natural energy in the ninja world today is much thinner than it was 1,000 years ago. At first, King Si thought it was because the chakra fruit produced by the sacred tree had drawn away too much natural energy from the ninja world and it had never recovered. But it was not until today when he entered Mayaboku Mountain that he suddenly realized. It turns out that the natural energy of the ninja world was secretly intercepted by this so-called sacred place for summoning beasts. The original work does not describe the exact location of Mount Mayaboku, but Fukasaku said that it takes about 30 days to get from Konoha to Mount Mayaboku, and at the speed of ninjas, it takes about 3 days to get from Konoha village to Sand village. Therefore, the distance between Konoha and Mount Mayaboku is about 10 times the distance between Konoha and Sand village. Mayaboku Mountain is not in the ninja realm, but in a different dimension attached to the ninja realm. It has a fixed spatial node with the ninja realm and is covered by a barrier. This node is called Labyrinth Mountain by the sage Fukasaku. The Mayaboku Mountain drawn by Kishimoto is a bit like an oasis in the desert, and is surrounded by tall rocks. It has similar terrain to the Kingdom of Wind and the Kingdom of Earth. Therefore, it is speculated that the spatial node of Mayaboku Mountain and the ninja realm may be located at the junction of the Kingdom of Wind and the Kingdom of Earth in the westernmost part of the ninja realm. Chapter 386. Pooh. What kind of sacred place for spiritual beasts? They were clearly a group of rats stealing the energy from his nursery. They were destined to die. Well, if this is the case with Mayaboku Mountain, then the same must be true for Ryokai Cave and the Wet Bone Forest. It seems that destroying them will not only allow Kaguya to vent her anger, but will also improve the quality of the nursery of the ninja world. It's really an unexpected surprise. King Si and Hibaiju walked slowly in the foggy valley. Suddenly, King Si frowned slightly, and his samsara eye flashed. Then, he released a yin-yang black rod from the Takamaji Ahara space, and it directly pierced through a toad in front of him that was about to jump away. Father! This is the toad used by Mayaboku Mountain to send warning signals. Black Zetsu discovered the toad's trace at this time, and immediately explained to King Si, "We may have been discovered. It doesn't matter." Ching Si waved his hand, "The news about it can't be spread." However, although King Si said this, he was not afraid even if he was discovered. After all, he had no intention of concealing his arrival. He came here to destroy Mayaboku Mountain. Moreover, his strength gave him enough confidence. Although this environment with abundant natural energy had a certain combat power bonus for those toads who had mastered fairy arts, the same was true for Ching Si. After all, it was just a fairy art, and he knew it too. The main hall of a temple deep in Mt Mayaboku. An unusually huge figure suddenly woke up from his sleep. It is none other than the founder of Mayaboku Mountain, the old charlatan known as the Great Toad Immortal, Gamamaru. Mayaboku Mountain. Incomprehensible words murmured from Gamamara's mouth, destruction. As soon as he finished speaking, Toad Mara's eyes, which were originally turbid and seemed to be shrouded in fog, suddenly seemed to have a bright light that penetrated through the layers of haze, dispelling the chaos and confusion contained therein, showing a clear look that saw through everything, and shining with the light of wisdom and insight. The old toad, who had seen the scene of the destruction of Mayaboku Mountain in his dream, now woke up completely. The white figure that slaughtered its fellow toads on Mount Mayaboku in its dream made its huge body shiver uncontrollably. No other toad could be a match for it. Even Fukasaku and Shima, who were proficient in the magic of Mount Mayaboku, were like babbling children in front of it. Gamamaru recalled the scene he saw in his dream. His eyes were sharp and his gaze slowly moved outside the hall. Through the half-open door, his sight was cast into the distance. It seemed to see that in the darkness, a blood-red light was gradually spreading, like a huge and ferocious net, sweeping towards Mayaboku Mountain. Moreover, the blood color was getting thicker and deeper, as if it was going to swallow up the entire Mayaboku Mountain. It seems that he is a bad guest. It's time for its old bones to stretch themselves. A faint green fluorescence suddenly appeared beside Gamamara's huge body, like a firefly dancing in the night sky, and then began to spread outside the hall. Gamamara's aura became stronger and stronger as the fairy chakra continued to flow out of his body. In a moment, an enormous green chakra beam suddenly rushed up from the temple hall like a roaring dragon and pierced the sky. Its momentum was so strong that it broke through the layers of clouds and mist in an instant, extending to the distant horizon, sweeping away all the snow-white clouds floating above Mount Mayaboku without a trace. The entire hall where Gamamaru was located was now completely enveloped by the fairy chakra it emitted. The dazzling green light illuminated every corner. A large amount of fairy chakra containing infinite power was continuously absorbed into Gamamara's body like a volcanic eruption, and then gushed out of its body. All the toads in Mount Myaboku were stunned when they saw the huge chakra beam that suddenly appeared where the big toad sage usually was. The next second, they heard the old but powerful voice of the great toad sage, "Myaboku mountain has been invaded by foreign enemies. Get ready to fight. My children." Although what Gamamaru saw in the dream made him know clearly that the toads in Myaboku mountain were no match for the enemy, and even when he said this, it meant that he was sending those toads to their deaths. However, protecting Myaboku mountain is also the responsibility of all the toads living here. And more importantly, it has no choice. Its body has become dull due to years of silence, so it needs some time to recover before it can fight against this powerful invader. Therefore, in order for Myaboku mountain to continue to be passed down, even if it is reluctant, it must let the toads continue to use their lives to buy it enough time. Sage Shima, who was cooking, and Sage Fukasaku, who was meditating, immediately stopped what they were doing and ran quickly towards the temple deep in Mount Myaboku when they sensed the immortal chakra burst out from Sage Gama. When they heard the warning from the great toad immortal, they were horrified. Not only was the isolated Myaboku mountain invaded by foreign enemies, but the great toad immortal was even forced to take action. This is something they have never experienced in their hundreds of years of life. At the same time, just as Gamamaru woke up from his dream after seeing the destruction of Mount Myaboku and notified all the toads in Mount Myaboku to prepare for the enemy, Siji and Black and White Zetsu had already walked out of the valley. Just as Kingxi was the first to walk out of the valley, a giant purple-red toad holding a black spiked fork pointed the weapon directly at Kingxi. It was Toad Jian who was practicing near the valley and came directly after hearing the warning from the great toad immortal. The reincarnation eye lit up slightly, Kingxi sneered disdainfully, then put his hands together and floated up at the same time. Kingxi was not surprised at all about Gamaken's arrival. After all, he had sensed it a long time ago and saw it through the samsara eye. Senjutsu. Storm release. Light Fang. A dazzling purple light shot out from Kingxi's mouth like lightning and instantly hit the weapon in Toad Jian's hand. With a crisp click sound, the extremely sturdy weapon was easily cut into two pieces like a fragile branch. Then, the purple laser continued to slash across Toad Jian's body, like an indestructible blade, directly cutting off his arm holding the weapon. Toad Jian cried out in pain, his face instantly turned as pale as paper, his body suddenly lost support, and he tilted uncontrollably to the side before falling heavily to the ground. Boom! There was a dull sound when Toad Jian's body collided with the ground. In an instant, a stream of scarlet blood gushed out from the wound on his broken arm like a flood. It quickly spread on the ground and formed a large and shocking pool of blood. For a moment, the air was filled with a strong and pungent smell of blood. Chapter 387. Hei Baiju, who followed Qing Si out of the valley, saw this scene. A hideous smile immediately appeared on the dark half of his face. He really loved to beat a drowning dog. So he stomped his feet hard, and a large amount of chakra rushed into the ground frantically. Wood style, diamond calling wood. In an instant, a huge tree rose from the ground, like a sharp spear, piercing through the body of Toad Jian who was lying on the ground with great force, and then directly hung him high on the huge tree. Immediately afterwards, Hei Baiju clasped his hands together and directly detonated the chakra contained in the giant tree. Wood release, cutting technique. Suddenly, the thorns exploded and branched out in Toad Jian's body, like bamboo shoots breaking out of the ground in spring, or like vines spreading wildly, quickly penetrating Toad Guang's blood vessels and internal organs, as well as the skin and muscle tissue all over his body. The next moment, accompanied by Toad Jian's shrill screams, the sharp tips of the wooden thorns pierced its skin and muscle tissue and penetrated from various parts of its body. In an instant, blood spurted out from the wounds like a spring, like a blood-colored fountain, blooming creepy flowers in the air and sprinkling on the surrounding ground. The smell of blood in the air became even stronger. At this time, Toad Jian had already lost any signs of life, and his body was swaying gently in the breeze, looking particularly miserable. Qing Si looked at Hei Baiju's actions and couldn't help but reveal a little surprise. This grown-up guy is really good at taking advantage of a victory, and he also has quite a few ideas. Well, in that case, of course he has to cooperate. So, Kingxi gathered a large amount of Senjutsu chakra in his throat, and then spit out a ball of hot and explosive flames towards Gamaken who was skewered high. Senjutsu fire style great fireball technique. The raging fire instantly engulfed Toad Jian's body, making a sizzling sound. Suddenly, the aroma of meat filled the air. Grilled toad skewers, done. Moreover, under the scorching heat, the blood that had spilled on the ground and had not yet dried up instantly turned into wisps of red smoke that rose up. The bright red blood gradually dissipated into the air at a speed visible to the naked eye, until the last trace of blood was completely evaporated. At this moment, a roar of extreme grief and anger came from a distance. Jian. The sound arrives before the toad. The next second, a huge red figure descended from the sky and slashed towards Kingxi and Hibaiju. Toad dagger slash. The visitor was none other than the brother of Gamabuntai who had just been killed. He was also a giant summoning beast known as the Three Horrors who appeared in the ninja world along with the three ninjas. The place where Toad went to usually practices is actually near Toad Jian, but today it happened to have gone somewhere else for something, so the speed at which it came here was slower than that of Toad Guang. And when it sensed that Toad Jian had already started fighting with the invader, it further accelerated its speed, preparing to support Toad Jian. However, it never expected that the invader would be so powerful. When it was about to arrive, Toad Jian had already been killed. Therefore, Gamabunta could be said to have watched helplessly as his brother was skewered and barbecued by CG and black and white Zetsu. Kingxi looked up at the giant short sword that Gamabunta was slashing down from above, and his samsara eye lit up with a gorgeous sky blue light, and his pupil power was output to the extreme in an instant. Young name is Viguna. So, just when Gamabunta was confidently waiting for his fierce and violent sword strike to succeed, he suddenly discovered in horror, where the hell is my huge short sword? With the burst of pupil power, Kingxi directly shrunk Gamabunta's giant short sword. Then, Kingxi flew over and kicked the falling Gamabunta, kicking him away. Ground-breaking kicks. Boom. The huge falling posture of Gamabunta suddenly stopped, and then, after being kicked by Kingxi, it flew out at a faster speed like a cannonball and hit the mountain in the distance. There was a loud boom and the mountain, which was originally hard and solid like a rock, began to tremble violently. Immediately afterwards, shocking cracks spread rapidly like a spider web, covering the entire surface of the mountain in the blink of an eye. Along with the collapse of the mountain, a huge pit suddenly appeared, and countless rubble of varying sizes rolled down from the mountain, making a huge roar, covering the huge body of Gamabunta underneath. At this time, another giant toad jumped over at an extremely fast speed. After a few leaps, it landed near Toad Buntai who had just been buried by the rubble. It was the last of the three Toad brothers, Toad Guang. The giant green toad holding two swords looked at the two invaders, Kingxi and Hibaizetsu, with serious eyes, and asked with concern, Bunta. Are you okay? Chapter 388. I'm fine. Guang. But be careful, the opponent is very strong and was killed by Jian in a very short time. And Gamabunta's dull voice came from under the rubble. Seeing his brother die tragically in front of him, he felt extremely sad and angry. However, Guang has also arrived now. With the cooperation of the two of them, they will definitely be able to avenge their brother Toad Jian's tragic death. Be careful of the guy in white. He has a weird eye technique. He just destroyed my weapon in an instant. Thinking of this, Gamabunta cheered up a little and reminded Gamahiro who came over. Then, it quickly lifted up the rubble that had buried it, stood up and jumped to the side of Toad Guang. Although Gamabunta had just been hit hard by CG, his injuries were not too serious. Because, on the one hand, Kingxi was just in a playful mood and did not take it seriously or use much strength. On the other hand, Gamabunta himself is very strong, and there is a large amount of fairy chakra in his body, which makes him thick-skinned and even has a stronger defense than Gamaken. Oh! I know. Gamahiro took Gamabunta's reminder to heart. He was also extremely sad about the death of his brother Gamaken. Oh? Another one coming. Kingxi raised his eyebrows. The support speed of these rotten toads was quite fast, but it was useless. He couldn't even use the Samsara Eye Chakra mode to deal with them. Black Zetsu. Split up and act. Fight quickly and decisively. Don't let any toad escape. Kingxi ordered calmly. He didn't plan to waste any more time. Next, he would quickly kill those who sensed stronger chakra aura, and then go straight to the old toad. The rest of the scum would be left to his eldest son. After all, Black Zetsu, who has mastered wood release, and with the assistance of White Zetsu, his strength is definitely comparable to that of a cage. Moreover, Black Zetsu is the wool separated by Kagaya using yin-yang release. Apart from yin-yang release, there is no other way to kill or trap him. Even the fairy technique can only cause damage to him. It is obvious that these toads in Mayaboku Mountain are not capable of yin-yang escape. Therefore, King C has nothing to worry about. Yes. Father. Black Zetsu nodded in response, then his body slowly sank into the ground, ready to go and destroy the other toads in Miyaboku Mountain. Gamabunta and Gamahiro, who heard the loud conspiracy of Seiji and Heizetsu, were not willing to let this strange-looking black and white hermaphrodite leave, so the two toads did not hesitate and launched an attack directly. Water style, Teppanyaki. Gamabunta started with a powerful water jutsu. He suddenly opened his mouth and extremely powerful chakra gathered instantly. Then a huge water ball with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared out of thin air and rushed towards Kingxi and Hibaiju at an astonishing speed. In the official setting, Gamabunta has a large amount of senjutsu chakra in his body, but when he debuts, all the skills he uses are ninjutsu. Kingxi directly raised his body and avoided Gamabunta's attack, but at the same time, Gamahiro's attack also arrived. Gamahiro drew out the two swords behind him, and at the same time as Gamabunta attacked, he jumped and charged towards Kingxi in mid-air. Toad double blade slash. Seeing this, Kingxi's expression remained unchanged. He then stood with one hand in front of his chest, extracted a large amount of fairy chakra in one breath, and at the same time, the power of the reincarnation eye burst out, causing the space in front to slightly distort. Immortal technique, fire style, storm dance. A raging wave of fire spewed out of Kingxi's mouth, like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins, rushing through the space that was distorted by the power of the samsara eye at an astonishing speed. The flames interacted with the surrounding air currents to form spiral vortices, which, accompanied by a deafening roar, madly roared and rushed towards Gamahiro. Although Gamahiro was extremely alert, it was still hit directly by the sea of fire raging in the air by Kingxi's casual attack. Accompanied by a dazzling firelight that suddenly lit up, the hot and violent flames spread at an alarming speed like a volcanic eruption, instantly engulfing and wrapping Toad Guang in it. The sea of fire kept rolling and surging, and every time it churned, it spewed out wildly dancing high-temperature tongues of fire, constantly burning the Toad Guang that was wrapped in the center. Although it struggled desperately, it was of no avail. The blazing flames devoured its body mercilessly. Toad Guang, whose body was burning in flames, couldn't control himself and fell straight down from mid-air. His huge body collided violently with the ground, making a dull and deafening noise and raising large clouds of dust. It lay on the ground in agony, its body twitching constantly, every inch of its skin suffering the merciless burning of the raging fire, and its heart-wrenching screams of pain kept echoing. The flames burned more and more fiercely, completely enveloping Toad Guang, forming a huge fireball. Its skin began to burn and crack, emitting wisps of black smoke and a pungent smell of burning. As the screams became weaker and weaker, in just a short moment, Toad Guang had completely lost his life. His huge body became shriveled and twisted, like a huge piece of inky black charcoal, emitting a pungent and unpleasant burnt smell. One strike. Instant kill. Guang. Toad Wenta cried out in sorrow. Everything happened so fast that before he could do anything, Toad Guang had already died in Kingxi's hands. At this moment, Gamabunta's eyes were red with anger. He had already overestimated Kingxi's strength, but he still didn't expect that Gamahiro couldn't even last a single round. However, in Kingxi's view, this was just the helpless rage of the weak, because the next one to die would be it. Chapter 389. Kingxi no longer cared about Gamahiro, who had been burned to charcoal and could no longer be seen in toad shape. Instead, he directly released chakra and flew towards Gamabunta at high speed. This summoning beast, Jiraiya, one of the three ninjas of Konoha, is the most famous in the ninja world. Its death is coming. Gamabunta saw Seiji approaching at a very fast speed, and he had no intention of running away or hiding. Having already lost two of his brothers, he knew that he might not be Seiji's opponent, but now, he just wanted revenge. So, Toad Wentai puffed his mouth and formed seals with both hands. Water style, continuous cannonballs. One after another, giant water balls, like cannonballs, with amazing momentum and speed, continuously attacked Kingxi in the air. The water balls drew arcs in the air and made sharp whistles. Kiyoshi, who was flying at high speed in the air, faced Gamabunta's saturation attack, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. It was finally an attack that looked decent. However, he had no intention of avoiding it at all. Through the insight of the Rinnegan, he could clearly observe that although there was a large amount of senjutsu chakra in Gamabunta's body, this water ball was just an ordinary ninjutsu. Then, the truth-seeking orbs appeared one by one beside Kingxi, and then turned into fluid shields one by one, flying around Kingxi and dissolving Gamabunta's Teppanyama attacks one by one. Seeing this scene, Gamon's huge toad eyes first showed a trace of shock and panic, but in an instant, they turned into full bloodthirstiness and madness. It's already crazy. Gamabunta's already huge body suddenly expanded rapidly at an astonishing speed like a balloon. At the same time, the large amount of fairy chakra in his body lost control like a wild horse and began to riot without any rules. Dazzling white light and extremely powerful yet chaotic chakra fluctuations were continuously released from Gamabunta's body. At this time, Gamabunta's heart was already filled with endless hatred, like a burning flame that completely devoured his sanity. The anger and pain were like thick dark clouds that tightly covered his eyes, making it impossible for him to see a glimmer of hope. Therefore, it went completely crazy and wanted to self-destruct to die together with Ciji, who invaded Myaboku Mountain and killed its two brothers. Looking at the rapidly expanding Gamabunta, Kingxi, who had already come close to him, showed a look of disdain. It's a commendable courage, but it's useless. It's just a summoned beast. Although its strength can be said to be top tier among summoned beasts, it wants to self-destruct in front of a 6 paths level Otsutsuki? How can that be possible? If it could successfully self-destruct, Kingxi would have no more time to mess around. This is really embarrassing for the Otsutsuki. So, Kingxi hovered in front of Gamabunta's expanding body and directly used a dojutsu. Young name Biguna May Rain. Countless yin-yang black rods were released by Kingxi from the Takamaji Ahara space, then restored to their original size and instantly inserted into various parts of Gamabunta's body. Suddenly, the expansion of Gamabunta's body stopped as if an invisible big hand had pressed the pause button. Its body, like a deflated ball, lost its support and became soft and weak, and the raging fairy chakra in its body gradually stagnated due to the large number of yin-yang black sticks. Gamabunta's self-destruction came to an abrupt end just like that. The next moment, Kingxi did not give Gamabunta any chance to make any other moves. As he waved his hand, 9 truth-seeking jades scattered out and continuously bombarded Gamabunta's body. Every time a truth-seeking jade bombarded, a part of Gamabunta's flesh would be annihilated. In a moment, Gamabunta, the giant summoning beast that made Jiraiya famous, was destroyed by the truth-seeking ball. At the moment when Gamabunta died, the great toad sage, also known as Gamamaru, in the main hall of the temple deep in Mount Myaboku revealed a deep sadness in his eyes. It sensed the death of the 3 toad brothers. However, despite its extreme grief, it had no way out because it could not save them at all. After all, Kingxi's movements were too fast, so fast that it had only absorbed about 1/3 of the large amount of fairy chakra stored in a special barrier under the hall, and it had completed the slaughter of the 3 toad brothers. At this time, the 2 sages Fukasaku and Shima arrived at the temple. When Fukasaku saw the state of the great toad sage, his expression was suddenly shocked. He understood what the great toad sage was doing. Master! Fukasaku looked at the big toad sage whose aura was rising rapidly due to absorbing a large amount of stored senjutsu chakra, and whose condition was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. He couldn't help but hesitated to speak. If this goes on, I'm afraid you will. The great toad sage heard Fukasaku's call outside the temple, but he did not give any response. Instead, he accelerated the absorption of the senjutsu chakra, because this was the only possible way he found in the prophecy to continue Mount Myaboku. Moreover, he had sensed that Ciji was approaching here quickly after killing the 3 toad brothers. Kingxi killed his way forward according to the chakra signals that were as bright as light bulbs in his perception. It can be said that no toad could be his match. The only one that performed slightly better was a giant toad called Yunsu, which was extremely large in size. In Kingxi's perception, it was second only to the old toad and the 2 fairy toads nearby. However, it is only relatively brighter. After the Yunsu, giant toad performed an alternative spiritual magic and swallowed Kingxi into its stomach. In just 3 breaths, Kingxi broke the barrier that it was proud to build in its stomach, and then used a fire in the Kaihudeo jade to scatter all its ashes. At the same time, Black Zetsu, with the cooperation of White Zetsu, started a massacre in Myaboku Mountain against the powerful toad, gourd toad, iron arm toad, world-seeing toad and others with the bodies of Black and White Zetsu. With the wood escape technique blessed by half of White Zetsu's body, it can be said that it is invincible and kills indiscriminately these weaker toads. Chapter 390. In Gamamera's perception, the chakra aura of the toads in Myaboku Mountain was disappearing at an extremely fast speed, which made it feel more and more painful. You know, these are its descendants and the future of Miyabokuyama. Now, he is about to be hunted down and killed by Kingxi and Heizetsu. Gamamaru forcibly dispelled the haze that shrouded the depths of his heart, and continued to absorb the fairy chakra in the barrier of the temple hall with all his strength. He had to admit that facing the upcoming white figure that would destroy Mount Miyaboku in his dream, even if he used the fairy chakra stored in the barrier to forcibly restore to its peak state, he was not 100% sure. It's because it didn't see the white figure displaying its full strength in its dream. Gamamara's progress in absorbing the fairy chakra was getting faster and faster, and just when its condition had recovered to nearly 90% of its peak, its face suddenly turned gloomy. Kingxi. Arrive. When the two sages Fukasaku and Shima saw Seiji's figure appear above the temple, a trace of deep sadness flashed in their eyes. Although their perception ability was not as good as that of the great Toad Sage, the three Toad brothers were their sons after all. Now, they were within the scope of MT Miyaboku and could no longer sense the chakra aura of the three Toad brothers. At the critical moment when Miyaboku Mountain was invaded by terrifying foreign enemies, they knew very well what this meant. However, they did not have any more time to indulge in grief, because they knew that now only they could buy time for the great Toad Immortal to recover. And when the giant Toad Sage who was madly absorbing fairy chakra in the hall saw the true face of Kingxi, the fog that it saw in its dream, which was shrouded in the white figure that destroyed Mount Miyaboku and made it unable to see clearly, also disappeared at the same time. Gamamara's lantern-like eyes shrank instantly, and his mind was shaken violently. After a moment, an old voice with a hint of realization echoed in the hall, "So it's the Otsutsuki clan." It, who calls Otsutsuki Hago Romo a brother, recognized Kiyoshi's identity as a member of the Otsutsuki clan at a glance. After recognizing Kiyoshi's identity, it knew that there was no room for negotiation in today's disaster. Although it was not clear that the purpose of Seiji's coming to destroy Mount Miyaboku was to vent his anger on his wife, it still understood the nature of the Otsutsuki clan. Not to mention that there was a fundamental disagreement between Mount Miyaboku, which had secretly intercepted a large amount of natural energy in the ninja world, and the Otsutsuki clan's sacred tree in terms of the demand for natural energy. Therefore, the moment Gamamaru knew that it was an Otsutsuki who came to his door, he knew that things had gotten really serious. As for the fact that Seiji was not from the Otsutsuki clan in the Starry Sky, but was an Otsutsuki born in the native ninja world, and was even the fourth Mizukage of the Hidden Mist Village, one of the 5 major ninja villages. Gamamaru knew nothing about this. After all, in its prophecies, Seiji's image has always been just a vague white figure, and Jiraiya, the contractor of Miyaboku Mountain, knows the appearance and image of Seiji, the 4th Mizukage of the Hidden Mist Village. However, since Miyaboku Mountain has never mentioned these things, Jiraiya naturally would not take the initiative to report this information, which is not very important to Miyaboku Mountain. Therefore, the gap in cognition has resulted in Gamamaru having no understanding of Kingxi until now, so it is natural that it has no idea what kind of person Kingxi is at this moment. Kingxi floated above the temple, looking through the half-open door of the main hall at the huge orange figure inside, with endless chill in his eyes. It was this old guy who bewitched Kagaya's rebellious son Otsutsuki Hago Romo, and eventually had his Kagaya sealed for 1,000 years. However, sensing Gamamara's chakra aura that was increasing exponentially, and the increasing amount of fairy chakra gathering in his body, Kingxi's bright sky blue reincarnated eyes couldn't help but show a hint of solemnity. Although this old toad is obviously not at the 6 paths level, the vast amount of fairy chakra gathered in its body is not so easy to deal with. If the amount is large enough, it is enough to cause a qualitative change, not to mention that this old toad also has the ability to predict the future. Then, blue-green chakra aura rose from Kingxi's body, and he directly entered the Samsara Eye chakra mode, ready to give Gamamaru a fierce attack before his condition had fully recovered. However, at this moment, the two sages, Fukasaku and Shima, took action. With their children's murder filled their hearts, they wantonly poured their fairy chakra towards Kingxi in the air. Immortal Technique Wind Release Shat. Senjutsu Water Style Water Slash. Shima flashed and leaped into the air, closing the distance between him and Seiji, his mouth opening wide. In an instant, there was a violent wind, sand and rocks flew everywhere, and a sandstorm that covered the sky and the sun appeared out of nowhere, sweeping towards Kingxi with overwhelming force. The flying yellow sand in the sky was like a roaring yellow dragon, with its fangs and claws bared, and chaos was everywhere it passed. At the same time, Fukasaku, who cooperated with Shima in perfect harmony, also opened his mouth and spit out. In an instant, an extremely thick high-pressure water column shot out like an arrow from a bow, cutting towards Kyoji with unparalleled impact force and huge water pressure. Tisk! What a disgusting toad! King C spat lightly and temporarily gave up the idea of attacking Gamamaru, who was about to recover in the hall. Although he was much stronger than Fukasaku and Shima, he could not dissolve the incoming magic while attacking Gamamaru. Therefore, he could only choose to get rid of Fukasaku and Shima first. Shinra Tenzen. Kyoji raised his hand towards the direction of Fukasaku and Shima, and a tremendous repulsive force exploded instantly, blocking and repelling the sandstorm and high-pressure water column, while also sending Fukasaku and Shima flying far away. Then, without changing his movements, King C instantly transformed the repulsive force into gravitational force, aiming at Fukasaku, who was being flung back, and quickly pulled him back. All things are attracted by heaven.